Imagine waking up in the heart of the greatest city the ancient world ever knew. The air is cool, the streets still quiet, and the first light of dawn glows against marble walls and tiled roofs. Soon the sound of sandals will echo through the alleys, fountains will sparkle in the morning sun, and the pulse of Rome will begin to beat again. This story will take you there through every corner of a living, breathing city that never truly sleeps. You will walk through bustling markets, serene bathhouses, and quiet temples. You will hear the voices of merchants, philosophers, and soldiers. You will feel the warmth of the sun on stone and the cool shade of courtyards hidden from the crowds. This is not a tale of battles or emperors. It is the story of one ordinary day in ancient Rome, seen through the eyes of those who lived it, from the humblest baker to the most powerful senator. Welcome, my name is Brian, and this is History to Relax. I am so glad you are here tonight to travel with me through time. If you enjoy calm journeys like this one, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below telling me where you are listening from. It helps our community grow, and I always love seeing how far these stories reach across the world. Now find a comfortable place to rest. Let your shoulders relax and your breathing slow. Close your eyes and imagine the soft light of dawn spreading over the 7 hills. The city of Rome is awakening. Sit back, relax, and let the story begin. Part 1. The Dawn over the 7 Hills. The night is thinning over Rome. A pale shimmer of light gathers beyond the eastern ridge, and the 7 hills begin to take shape from the darkness like islands rising from a silver sea. The Tiber moves quietly below, its slow current carrying the last reflections of the stars. Mist hangs low above the water, veiling the arches of stone bridges and softening the outlines of temples that guard the riverbanks. A faint scent of smoke, mixed with damp earth and the sweetness of laurel, drifts through the air. In the hush before sunrise, the city seems asleep, yet life is already stirring in hidden corners. On the Aventine Hill, the first sounds come from the bakeries. Behind a wooden door, a man in a soot-streaked tunic bends to stoke the coals of a clay oven. The glow deepens, painting his face with orange light. Around him, baskets of dough wait beneath cloths, shaped by practiced hands hours earlier. Soon the smell of warm bread will roll through the narrow alleys, winding between walls stained with age. Across the city, the streets are still mostly empty. Stray dogs nose at refuse left from the night before, and cats slink along the edges of courtyards searching for scraps. The stones of the paving are slick with dew. A few early workers pass in silence, wrapped in cloaks, their sandals tapping softly against the stone. Somewhere in the distance, a mule snorts and shakes its harness. The day, slow and deliberate, is beginning to unfold. From the Palatine Hill, the heart of power and privilege, the view stretches wide. Marble columns catch the earliest light, and roofs of red tile glimmer with moisture. Within the walls of a noble villa, servants move quietly, lighting lamps in corridors still dim with sleep. In the atrium, a fountain murmurs beneath a bronze statue. The master of the house, still resting in his chamber, is unaware of the careful rhythm that keeps his world in order. Slaves polish metal, sweep leaves from the courtyard, and prepare basins of fresh water for the morning ritual of washing. In one chamber, a young boy wakes before his tutor calls. He sits upright on a narrow couch, shivering a little in the chill air, and listens to the city stretching awake below. The faint rumble of carts begins to echo through the streets. He knows the sound well, the wagons bringing vegetables from the countryside, the clatter of amphorae filled with wine or oil from distant provinces, the early life of commerce that will soon fill the forum. To him, Rome is both home and wonder, a place of endless noise and light, yet always beginning anew each morning. Down by the river, the docks awaken. Laborers haul ropes, lift jars, and shout to one another in the half-light. Barges heavy with grain drift against the current, guided by long poles. From Egypt, from Sicily, from Africa, the empire feeds the city, and the river is its silent messenger. The air smells of fish, tar, and wet rope. Gulls circle overhead, their cries mingling with the splash of water against stone. As the sun finally crests the horizon, the first golden beam strikes the Capitoline Hill. Statues of gods gleam faintly, their faces carved in eternal calm. The temples that crown the summit begin to glow as if lit from within. On the steps of the Temple of Jupiter, a priest arrives, wrapped in a white toga, his sandals whispering against the marble. He lights a small brazier, and the thin smoke of incense rises into the morning air. The scent drifts outward across the forum below, carrying with it a prayer for order and prosperity. The forum itself is still quiet. Market stalls stand empty, their awnings furled, their counters covered with cloth. The stone pavement is wet from the night's mist. A few beggars sleep beside the columns, wrapped in old cloaks. Soon the hum of business will awaken here, but for now the silence gives the place a sacred calm. Pigeons flutter from the pediments, and the distant ringing of a hammer marks the blacksmith beginning his day. In the Insulae, the crowded apartment buildings where most Romans live, the mood is less serene. Smoke curls from cooking fires as women prepare simple breakfasts of bread and cheese. Children cry for attention, and voices echo between the close walls. A bucket is lowered down to the street to draw water from the fountain below. The lower levels smell of damp plaster and olive oil. Upstairs, a tenant complains that the cistern is nearly dry. Yet even in these cramped quarters, there is life, warmth, and routine. A mother hums a song as she braids her daughter's hair, and a father tightens his belt before heading to the market. As the light grows stronger, Rome changes tone. Shadows retreat from the alleys. The marble of temples and public buildings gleams, showing veins of white and gray that shimmer in the sun. On the streets leading to the forum, vendors begin to set up their stalls. The sound of wooden carts rattling over cobblestones rises like a heartbeat. A flower seller arranges garlands of roses and violets in a woven basket, the colors vivid against her tunic. Nearby, a man selling olives sings softly to himself while setting out his jars. The air fills with the aroma of baked bread, crushed herbs, and the faint metallic scent of fresh water from the fountains. At one intersection, a public fountain pours continuously from a carved lion's mouth into a stone basin. A young boy stops to cup his hands beneath it, drinking deeply before running on. The water sparkles in the sun, the same water that flows from aqueducts miles away, built by engineers whose names few remember, but whose craft sustains millions. By mid-morning, the city hums. Messengers hurry through the streets carrying tablets sealed with wax. They dodge between ox carts and groups of citizens walking to the basilicas or law courts. A group of soldiers passes in formation, their bronze helmets flashing with reflected light. Their steps strike the ground in perfect rhythm, echoing off the walls. Behind them, a poet pauses at a doorway, watching the scene unfold, gathering fragments of life for a verse he may never finish. At a small shrine near the Subura district, a woman pauses to leave an offering. She places a few flowers and murmurs a short prayer to her household gods. The altar is darkened with soot from years of incense, the statue worn smooth by thousands of hands. Around her, the street buzzes with chatter and laughter, but in that moment the noise fades. Religion in Rome is not confined to temples. It lives in every threshold, every whisper of gratitude or fear. The heat begins to rise and the smell of the city grows heavier. Dust swirls in the air, stirred by passing wheels. The cries of vendors overlap, one calling out the freshness of his fish, another boasting of cheap figs. From an open window, the sound of a lyre drifts down as a young musician practices, each note trembling in the warm air. A group of children runs past, chasing a hoop along the road until it rattles against a stone step. Above all this noise, the domes and towers of Rome catch the full light of day. From the Esquiline Hill, one can see the city spread like a living map. The amphitheater, still empty at this hour, looms massive and silent. Beyond it, the line of aqueducts stretches into the countryside, carrying the lifeblood of civilization from distant springs. Fields shimmer in the distance, where farmers already labor beneath the same sun that now brightens the marble of the temples. The baker's work is nearly done. His shelves are stacked with loaves scored in neat patterns. Customers arrive with coins and small baskets, exchanging greetings. A soldier buys bread to carry on his patrol. An old woman asks for yesterday's crusts at a discount. The baker nods, wiping flour from his hands, the simple rhythm of trade, steady as breath. In a shaded courtyard, a senator's wife walks among her servants. She pauses beside a fountain shaped like a dolphin, watching the water leap and fall. Her sandals make no sound on the mosaic floor. She picks a sprig of mint from a planter and crushes it between her fingers, breathing its scent. For her, the day begins not with labor but with preparation, letters to dictate, garments to choose, guests to expect. The city outside her walls may be noisy and chaotic, but within the villa, everything is controlled, arranged, polished. Street performer appears near the forum, juggling wooden balls to amuse passers-by. Children gather to watch, laughing each time he drops one and pretends surprise. The small crowd swells as merchants arrive, and the empty square fills with movement. The smell of cooked grain drifts from a nearby stall. The day has officially begun, and Rome, ancient and alive, resumes its eternal rhythm. As the sun climbs higher, the city shines like a mosaic of motion and sound. The marble gleams, the air trembles with heat, and the voices of thousands weave together into a single living hum. Every doorway holds a story, every street a memory. From palaces to tenements, from workshops to temples, all share the same morning light. Above it all, on the quiet heights of the Palatine, a statue of Augustus looks eastward, the stone face calm and unchanging. The emperor is long dead, yet his image watches over the city he once ruled. Beneath him, the people move like water through stone channels, each unaware of the countless mornings that have come before, each certain that their Rome will last forever. By late morning, the first cicadas begin to sing in the gardens beyond the walls. Their sound mingles with the rustle of leaves and the distant laughter of bathers at the public fountains. The sky has turned from silver to bright blue. The mist has vanished from the river, and the bridges now stand clear and solid in the sun. The city is fully awake. The baker closes his door to rest. The senator's wife reclines in the cool shade of her atrium. Laborers stop to eat small meals of bread, olives, and cheese. In every corner of Rome, the pattern of the day continues. The morning has passed, and the eternal city moves into its next rhythm, louder, busier, but still touched by the same golden light that first broke over its 7 hills. Part 2, The Streets Come Alive. The mist has lifted, and the light over Rome has sharpened into gold. The air carries the hum of 1,000 footsteps, and the long shadows of dawn have melted into brightness. It is late morning now, and the city that once murmured softly has begun to roar with life. From the Palatine to the Suburra, every street and square echoes with movement. At the edge of the forum, vendors open their stalls in a practiced rhythm, the sound of wooden shutters being lifted and iron locks unfastened rings out across the plaza. Baskets of fruit are set down on stone counters, and bolts of colored cloth are unrolled like ribbons of sunlight. The marble underfoot glistens where water has been poured to cool the dust. A few patricians stroll through the colonnades, their sandals whispering against the polished floor, attended by slaves who carry parasols and scrolls. They nod politely to one another, but seldom stop to talk. Near the center of the forum, the smell of grilled fish mingles with that of wet stone and hot bread. A boy tends a small brazier, fanning the coals with a reed fan while his father calls out to potential buyers. "Fresh from Ostia, still kissed by the sea." The man's voice carries above the noise of the crowd. Women in long stolas haggle over prices, balancing baskets on their hips. Every gesture, every exchange seems part of a timeless dance that repeats with the rising of the sun. Carts rattle past, drawn by oxen whose hooves clatter against the paving stones. Each driver shouts warnings to pedestrians, though few move quickly enough to escape the spray of mud from the wheels. The streets of Rome are narrow, twisting veins through which the lifeblood of the empire flows. From balconies above, laundry flutters in the breeze, casting shadows that sway over the crowds below. Children lean over railings to watch the commotion, their laughter bright against the deeper tones of the city's heartbeat. At a fountain near the Forum of Julius, the water splashes clear and cold from a sculpted lion's mouth. Citizens gather with clay jars, filling them one by one. The fountain is both meeting place and stage, where neighbors trade gossip while pretending to mind their errands. A young woman speaks quietly to her friend about the senator's son seen walking with an actress from the theater district. An old man, listening nearby, shakes his head in mock disapproval but smiles to himself. In Rome, rumor flows faster than water. Further uphill, the workshops begin their chorus. From the street of the bronzesmiths comes the steady ring of hammers striking metal. Sparks leap in tiny bursts of light as molten bronze is poured into molds. The smell of smoke and oil thickens the air. A sculptor in a nearby courtyard chisels at a half-finished statue, the rhythmic sound echoing off the walls. Dust from the marble hangs in sunlight like fine mist, coating the craftsman's hair and beard in white. For him, this is the music of his profession, the harmony of effort, precision, and pride. In a shaded alley near the Capitoline, scribes sit at wooden tables copying legal texts and letters. Their reed pens scratch softly against waxed tablets and papyrus sheets. They work with quiet concentration, heads bowed, lips moving as they repeat each line before committing it to writing. The air smells of ink and beeswax. Now and then, a messenger arrives breathless, dropping off a decree or a speech to be transcribed before sunset. The Empire's words must travel quickly, and these men give them form. A few streets away, the Subura district hums with a different energy. Here, the houses are taller and closer together, the air thicker, the noise constant. Shopkeepers shout above one another to lure customers. Perfume sellers, bakers, butchers, and cloth merchants crowd the same narrow lanes. The smell of spices from the east mixes with the sharp scent of vinegar and the sweetness of figs. A barber calls out from his doorway, offering shaves and gossip in equal measure. The hum of conversation never fades, it only changes tone. At a street corner, a philosopher has gathered a small crowd. His voice is calm but firm as he argues about virtue and the nature of happiness. Around him, men in simple tunics listen with curiosity or amusement. Some nod in agreement, others laugh quietly. The philosopher gestures toward the sky, his words rising like a sermon, though his audience is as transient as the clouds above. When he finishes, a boy walks among the listeners, holding a small basket for coins. A few are dropped in, most are not. Still, the man bows slightly, satisfied that at least for a moment, He has been heard. A group of soldiers passes through, their armor gleaming in the sunlight. The crowd parts for them automatically. Their steps are slow but disciplined, and their eyes sweep the crowd with trained ease. They are not here for ceremony, but for presence, a reminder that beneath all this freedom of movement, Rome's order is maintained by strength. Children stare at them in awe, tracing the glint of bronze along their helmets. One soldier offers a faint smile to a boy who salutes him with clumsy imitation. The clangor of the market grows louder as noon approaches. In the forum, arguments rise and fall like waves. Merchants debate prices in half a dozen accents. Foreigners from across the empire barter for goods they will send back to their homelands: Egyptian linen, Gallic wine, Iberian copper. Rome is not only the heart of its world, but also its echo chamber, collecting the voices of every province and returning them amplified. From above, the city seems to shimmer. The sun reflects off thousands of rooftops, and the air vibrates with sound. Yet beneath this energy, there is structure. Every citizen knows their rhythm, their place, their path. The fish seller near the fountain calls out the same phrases his father did. The potter on the Esquiline shapes his clay with the same motions his grandfather taught him. Even the beggars on the temple steps occupy the same spots each day. In Rome, repetition is not monotony but identity. At the edge of the forum, an orator climbs the rostra. He stands tall against the marble backdrop, his toga arranged perfectly. The crowd quiets, anticipating performance as much as persuasion. His voice rings clear, trained by years of practice. He speaks of civic duty, of loyalty to the gods, of gratitude to the emperor. His words flow like the Tiber itself, steady, wide, persuasive. Even those who do not agree cannot help but listen. The art of speech in Rome is power made visible. A beggar crouches near the steps of the basilica, holding out a wooden bowl. He watches the speaker but cannot hear him over the surrounding noise. For him, words are luxury, coins are survival. Now and then, a passerby drops one into his bowl without breaking stride. The small clink is softer than the orator's voice, yet more real to the man who hears it. In a shaded portico, a group of schoolboys recite lessons under the watchful eye of their tutor. Their small voices rise in unison, repeating phrases from Latin poets. When one falters, the tutor raises a thin stick, not in anger but in ritual correction. The boys correct their tone and continue. Around them, the world bustles, but their rhythm remains fixed, another layer in the city's chorus. A donkey laden with amphorae passes through the square, guided by a woman in a patched tunic. Her face is sunburned, her hands rough from labor. She delivers wine to the tavern at the corner, greeting the innkeeper by name. Inside, the scent of fermented grapes and smoke fills the air. Travelers sit at wooden tables drinking watered wine, their laughter spilling into the street. In one corner, a musician plucks the strings of a cithara, the soft notes rising above the chatter like a distant breeze. By early afternoon, the heat is heavy. Shadows shrink beneath the columns, and many citizens seek the relief of shade. Water carriers walk the streets with clay jugs, calling out their trade. They sell cool sips to those who cannot reach the fountains. A few young men, too poor for leisure but unwilling to work in the sun, sit on the steps of a temple, arguing half-heartedly about politics. Their voices fade as sleep overtakes them. The smell of food begins to change. Stalls selling morning bread close, and others open with trays of roasted chickpeas, spiced sausages, and sweet pastries glazed with honey. The mix of aromas thickens the air. Flies gather, and hands wave them away. Despite the heat, the appetite of the city never rests. At a crossroads near the Esquiline Gate, a storyteller draws a crowd. He is lean and animated, his voice rich with expression. He tells tales of distant wars, of emperors and heroes, of monsters lurking beyond the empire's edge. Children cluster around his feet, their eyes wide. Even adults pause, drawn by the rhythm of his words. For a few moments, the noise of the city fades, replaced by shared imagination. When he finishes, he passes a small cup for coins. A few drop in, and he bows, promising another story tomorrow. As the sun begins its slow descent, the light shifts again. It softens, turning the marble walls a deeper hue of amber. The crowd thins slightly, though the noise never ceases. Laborers make their way home, their tunics damp with sweat. Shopkeepers count coins and cover their stalls. The scent of crushed herbs and dust lingers in the air. The city exhales but doesn't rest. A poet sits on the steps of a temple, writing lines he will later read to friends by lamplight. He listens to the fading bustle, the murmur of voices like an endless sea. In the distance, the faint sound of hammers still rings from the workshops. The empire breathes through its people, each heartbeat a small echo of eternity. From the upper terraces of the Palatine, the view stretches across this living organism, marble and shadow, noise and silence intertwined. Smoke rises from kitchens, pigeons whirl above rooftops, and the gleam of the river threads through it all. To an observer above, the city seems eternal. But to those within it, the day feels fleeting, fragile, made of moments that vanish like dust in sunlight. By the time the sun reaches its zenith, the streets glow with heat. The stones are hot beneath every footstep, and the air shimmers above the rooftops. Yet even under the heaviest light, Rome does not stop. Couriers run messages, craftsmen shape their wares, priests tend their fires, and merchants call out until their voices grow hoarse. The empire's rhythm beats on, unbroken. The streets have fully come alive. They are the veins of the city, pulsing with human motion and purpose. Every cry, every sound, every gesture merges into one vast living chorus, a sound that has no single source and no end. It is the voice of Rome itself, the eternal hum of power and life intertwined, echoing beneath the sky of an empire that believes it will never fall. Part 3: The Market of the People. The air over Rome grows heavy with warmth. The sun stands high, glinting from rooftops and bronze statues, and the scent of the city thickens with the perfume of trade. From every quarter, people converge toward the markets. Some walk with deliberate purpose, others drift, as if carried by the rhythm of the streets. It is midday now, and commerce rules the heart of the empire. At the center of this living web lies the Forum Romanum. Its marble pavements shimmer under the sun, and its columns cast long, sharp shadows across the open space. The sound of voices rises like the beating of wings. Merchants arrange their stalls in neat rows beneath colored awnings, each marked by the scent of its goods. Baskets of olives glisten with oil, amphorae of wine stand in orderly lines, and woven mats display jewelry from far-off lands. A passerby could walk from Africa to Gaul without leaving the square, so vast are the origins of the goods that fill it. Near the base of the rostra, a fishmonger pours salt water over his catch to keep it bright. The silver scales flash in the light as he calls out to the crowd, naming each type with pride. The customers haggle without pause. The tone of their voices blends irritation and pleasure, for in Rome, bargaining is not only a necessity, but a sport. Beside him, a spice merchant opens a small chest and releases a breath of cinnamon and myrrh into the air. For a moment, the sharp scent overtakes all others, cutting through the smell of bodies and dust. Around the edges of the forum, professional money changers sit behind wooden tables. They handle coins that have traveled more widely than most people ever will. The denarii bear faces of emperors past and present, each with faint scratches from countless hands. The clinking of metal forms a kind of rhythm, measured and confident. Now and then, a wealthy man pauses, have foreign coins exchanged for Roman currency, nodding curtly when the value is declared. The money changers bow, but only slightly. They too hold a form of power, subtle and indispensable. Not far away, the voices of sellers of fabric rise above the hum. Rolls of linen, wool, and dyed silk hang from wooden beams. The colors catch the light. Deep purple for senators, bright red for the military, soft white for those who can afford refinement. Women move among the stalls, touching the cloth with careful fingers, weighing texture against cost. Every purchase, even of something simple, carries a trace of pride. Beneath the porticos, scribes write contracts on wax tablets. Their quick strokes and murmured readings form a background music of bureaucracy. Slaves wait nearby with baskets and bags, ready to carry whatever their masters choose to buy. A pair of soldiers off duty share bread and cheese while watching the crowd. Their laughter rises briefly before being lost again in the tide of sound. Beyond the walls of the central forum, another world of markets unfolds along the Tiber. The air here is thicker, the smells more pungent. This is the Forum Boreum, the cattle market, and one of the oldest places in the city. Wooden pens line the riverbank, filled with lowing oxen and bleating goats. The ground is damp with mud and straw. Traders shout above the noise, waving sticks or pieces of rope as they argue over prices. The language of this market is rough and direct, the humor earthier than in the marble squares of the patricians. Yet here too lies the foundation of Rome's wealth. Without the toil of these men, no feast would fill the tables of the villas above. Nearby, barges from the countryside arrive with grain, fruit, and wine. Dockhands leap onto the platforms to tie ropes and unload goods. The splash of water, the grunt of labor, and the creak of wood blend into a single, endless rhythm. Each crate opened releases its own story: figs from Campania, olives from Hispania, amphorae of Egyptian grain stamped with imperial seals. Rome's appetite reaches across the seas, and every arrival feeds both body and pride. In the afternoon light, the river shimmers like a ribbon of metal. Children play at the edge, skipping stones and laughing while their parents trade nearby. A fisherman repairs his net, pulling strands tight between his hands. The water catches the reflection of distant bridges and the outlines of the temples above, reminders that even here, amid mud and noise, the gods are watching. As the day deepens, food stalls multiply. The smell of cooked meat rolls through the air, thick and enticing. Vendors sell skewers of roasted lamb, hot lentil stew, and bread stuffed with cheese. Customers eat standing, wiping their hands on rough cloths. A musician walks through the crowd playing a reed flute, his melody light and wandering. A girl tosses him a coin, and he bows without breaking the tune. Uphill in the Sabora, the market takes on a different face. The streets are narrower here, the noise sharper, the crowd denser. Shouts and laughter echo between high walls streaked with soot. This is the market of the poor, alive with color and urgency. Here, stalls are built from scraps of wood and fabric, and goods are displayed on blankets spread over the ground. The scent of spices and sweat fills the air. Women haggle fiercely over vegetables and fish. Children weave between legs, carrying small bundles. A man sells clay lamps painted with the images of gods, holding each up so the light glows through the thin pottery. Another offers charms against sickness and ill fortune, promising protection for a few small coins. His voice is hoarse from shouting, but his eyes shine with conviction. People buy from him not out of belief, but because hope is its own currency. A group of foreign traders sets up near a crossroads. Their language is unfamiliar to most, and their clothing marks them as travelers from the East. They display carpets, glass beads, and small ivory carvings. Curious onlookers gather, drawn by the exotic colors and patterns. The merchants smile politely, speaking with gestures when words fail. Rome's greatness lies not only in conquest but in absorption, and every accent here is a thread in its tapestry. In a nearby tavern, the noise is even greater. Workers crowd inside to escape the glare of the sun, drinking watered wine and eating salted fish. The air is thick with smoke from oil lamps. A storyteller sits in the corner, spinning tales of heroes and emperors to whoever will listen. Some nod with interest, others simply rest their heads against the walls, letting his voice fill the space between waking and rest. Outside, the rhythm of trade continues without pause. The wheelwright hammers iron rims onto wooden frames. The cobbler sits cross-legged on his stool, sewing sandals while chatting with customers. Each trade feeds the next, and the cycle of work binds the city together more firmly than any law. Back in the central forum, the heat begins to ease. The shadows lengthen, and the tone of the marketplace shifts. Merchants grow less aggressive, their voices lower, their movements slower. The crowd thins slightly as the wealthy retreat to their homes for the midday rest. But many remain. The poor cannot afford to waste daylight, and the city's pulse never stops entirely. A priest passes through the square, collecting small offerings for the Temple of Mercury, patron of merchants. He moves quietly, accepting coins and fruit with a nod of thanks. For the sellers, this gesture is as much tradition as devotion. Fortune must be courted daily, and in Rome, even commerce has its sacred rhythm. At the far edge of the forum, a small dispute breaks out. Two men argue over a shipment of olive oil, voices rising, hands gesturing wildly. A magistrate's assistant intervenes, urging calm, and soon the tension fades. The crowd resumes its murmur. In a city so vast, conflict is as ordinary as breath, and peace is simply the moment between arguments. From a balcony above the square, a woman watches the scene unfold. She is neither rich nor poor, the wife of a craftsman, her face lined from years of sunlight. She watches the motion below with quiet affection. To her, this chaos is beauty, the endless movement, the sound of trade, the visible proof that Rome is alive. She turns back inside where her husband works shaping bronze figures for a client, the glow of the forge flickering on the walls. As the sun begins its slow descent, the markets prepare for change. Some sellers pack their goods, others call out last offers. The sound of carts rattling away mixes with the laughter of those who linger. A flock of pigeons sweeps across the sky, circling once before settling on the roof of a temple. The light grows warmer, deepening to amber, and the marble of the forum seems to hold the color as if reluctant to let it go. Down by the river, the last barges unload before nightfall. Dockhands shout to one another as they lift the final crates. The water glows red with the reflection of the sky. The smell of damp wood and tar fills the air, mingled with the faint sweetness of wine that has spilled from an overturned jar. As the day ends, the river keeps flowing, patient and unhurried, as it has through every market day since the city's birth. The Forumborium quiets. Animals rest in their pens, and traders share wine from clay cups, counting the day's earnings. Laughter rises from small fires where meals are being cooked. Across the river, the city glows in the fading light, its temples and arches gleaming like embers. In the Sabara, the transformation is slower. The market lingers into twilight. Torches are lit, their flames dancing against the walls. Music begins from somewhere unseen, and the voices of the crowd soften but do not fade. For the poor, night does not bring leisure, but a continuation of trade in another key. Candles flicker on doorsteps, and the smell of cooked beans drifts through the air. By the time the first stars appear, the last merchants of the Central Forum are gone. The marble square lies empty, its stones cooling in the night air. A stray dog wanders between the columns, sniffing for scraps. The bronze statues of emperors and gods gaze down in silence, their faces unchanging, witnesses to another day's commerce completed. The markets of Rome have quieted, but their echoes remain. They live in the rhythm of footsteps, in the faint scent of spices carried by the wind, in the memory of voices rising and falling like the tide. The people have gone to rest, yet the spirit of exchange still hums beneath the stones. It is the pulse of the eternal city, the sound that binds farmer to noble, slave to senator, and Rome to the vast world that feeds her. Part 4. The Heart of Power. The sun has begun its slow descent, yet the air above the forum still trembles with light. The market cries have softened, but in the marble buildings that rise along the square, a different kind of noise has taken their place. It is the murmur of politics, the quiet roar of an empire governing itself. From the steps of the Curia Julia, the Senate House gleams like a vessel of order. Its tall bronze doors stand open, and a stream of men in togas moves steadily inside. Their garments ripple like waves of white under the golden sky. The scent of polished stone and incense from nearby temples lingers in the air. Onlookers gather at a respectful distance. Some are merchants seeking favor, others simple citizens drawn by curiosity, but all know they stand near the center of power. The Curia is cool and shaded within. Shafts of light fall from narrow windows high above, cutting through the dimness in bright, straight beams. Senators take their seats on rows of marble benches, their voices low at first, then rising in bursts of conversation. Slaves move between them, carrying tablets, wax seals, and cups of water. The atmosphere is one of solemn routine rather than grandeur, a theater of logic, custom, and persuasion. At the front of the chamber, the presiding magistrate sits on a raised platform. His expression is calm but alert, his hands resting lightly on his knees. When he speaks, his voice carries easily through the hall, practiced and firm. He calls for the agenda of the day, discussion of a proposed aqueduct expansion, reports from the provinces, and the review of petitions from citizens. It is the empire in miniature, each issue a thread in a vast fabric that stretches beyond sight. Outside, in the blazing courtyard, petitioners wait. Some stand beneath the shade of porticos, others sit on the steps, their scrolls clasped tightly in their hands. A farmer from Etruria has come to plead for reduced taxes after a season of poor harvest. Beside him, a veteran soldier seeks payment long delayed. Their faces show hope and exhaustion in equal measure. From time to time, a clerk appears to call a name, and one of them rises to enter, disappearing into the marble corridors. Scribes move constantly between the chambers. They carry bundles of wax tablets strapped with leather cords, their tunics marked with ink stains and dust. In the Hall of Records, they work in silence at long wooden tables, copying decrees and orders into neat lines. The scratching of pens fills the air like the whisper of rain. Every word written here will travel outward to governors, generals, and tax collectors, shaping decisions that affect millions. Rome rules as much by ink as by iron. In an adjacent courtyard, messengers wait with their horses. The animals stamp their hooves and toss their heads, impatient in the heat. When a scroll is sealed and tied, the messenger mounts and rides off through the city streets, heading toward the gates and the long roads that fan across the empire. The roads are Rome's veins, and every letter that travels them keeps the empire's heart beating. The guards at the entrance of the Curia stand motionless in polished armor. The sunlight glints from their helmets and gilded breastplates. They watch the crowd without expression, eyes sweeping over everyone who passes. People lower their voices as they walk near, sensing the weight of authority that hangs in the air. To be seen here is to stand beneath the gaze of the state itself. Across the square, the Basilica Emilia hums with quieter energy. Inside, merchants and lawyers conduct their business beneath painted ceilings and marble arches. The cool shade of the hall offers a brief refuge from the heat. The murmur of conversation fills the space like a tide, rising and falling as cases are argued and bargains struck. In one corner, a man pleads his case before a magistrate about a shipment lost at sea. The official listens, nodding occasionally, his wax tablet resting on his knee. Outside, a small crowd gathers near the Temple of Saturn. Here, the state treasury is kept, heavy chests filled with coins, sealed and guarded. Two soldiers stand by the doors, their spears crossed in front of them. Nearby, an accountant seated at a small table tallies sums on an abacus, his fingers moving swiftly. The sound of clicking beads punctuates the afternoon air. Farther up the slope of the Capitoline Hill, the temples glow in soft light. The smoke of offerings rises into the sky, thin and steady. The priests move with deliberate grace, their white robes spotless despite the dust of the city. Each gesture, each sprinkle of wine, each whispered invocation ties the realm of politics to that of faith. In Rome, the gods are never far from the affairs of men. As the afternoon deepens, shadows stretch across the forum. The senators emerge from the curia one by one, their discussions trailing into the open air. Groups form beneath the porticos as they continue to debate, voices echoing against the stone. A few laugh softly, relieved that the day's formalities are done. Others walk alone, their faces marked by thought, their sandals clicking on the pavement. Among the onlookers, scribes and petitioners take note of who leaves with a smile and who with a frown. In this city, expression is currency. A single nod from a senator can mean the difference between fortune and ruin. The watchers learn to read the smallest signs, a tilt of the head, a pause in conversation, the direction of a departing glance. Near the statue of Julius Caesar, a group of students gathers around an older man in a faded toga. He gestures toward the curia as he speaks, teaching them the art of rhetoric. His voice carries softly over the sound of the crowd. He reminds them that words, when used with precision, can move armies and shape laws. The boys listen with serious faces, the marble of the Senate House gleaming behind their teacher like a silent witness. In a corner of the forum, a man kneels beside a pillar. He is a craftsman, one hand roughened by years of work, the other resting on the stone. He murmurs a short prayer of thanks, not to Jupiter or Mars, but to Mercury for the sale of a statue earlier that day. Faith and fortune mingle freely here, neither entirely separate from the other. A gust of wind moves through the square, carrying with it a faint scent of pine from the distant hills. The banners on the temples flutter briefly, then fall still. The noise softens. For a moment, it seems as though the whole city takes a breath. The sunlight has turned warm and honey-colored, filling every crevice with a glow that feels almost sacred. From the steps of the Basilica Julia, the crowd looks smaller now, but the sense of purpose remains. Clerks still walk briskly with bundles of scrolls, slaves sweep the paving stones clean of dust, and a few children chase one another between the columns. Life continues within the architecture of order. Inside one of the smaller offices, a senator meets with a scribe to finalize a decree. The scribe reads aloud, his tone careful and measured. The senator nods, then presses his seal into warm wax. The emblem hardens almost instantly, an eagle with outstretched wings. The act is simple, almost mundane, yet it binds countless lives to obedience. The senator signs his name, sets down the stylus, and looks toward the window where the sunlight glows against the marble. For a moment, he feels the weight of it all, the Empire's reach, the fragility of control, then rises and leaves the room. As he steps outside, the evening air meets him cool and faintly scented with smoke. The torches along the colonnade have been lit, their flames bending in the breeze. Citizens pass by carrying baskets or scrolls, hurrying to finish their errands before nightfall. Somewhere in the distance, a trumpet sounds from a guard post marking the hour. The sound fades into the hum of voices, blending with the rhythmic footfalls of the patrols. A beggar near the temple gates lifts his hand for alms. The senator drops a small coin into his palm without a word. The man bows deeply, murmuring thanks. For a moment, they stand as opposites in every measure of fortune, yet joined by the smallest exchange. Then the senator walks on, disappearing into the growing shadows. Above the forum, the last light of the sun catches on the gilded roof of the Temple of Jupiter. The reflection burns bright for a heartbeat, then fades as the sky turns from gold to violet. The torches below flicker to life one by one. The great square that began the day in the quiet of dawn now hums again, though softer, with the voices of those who remain. The merchants have gone home, but the wheels of authority turn still, quiet, and relentless. As night approaches, the documents sealed today will be carried to distant provinces. The decisions made in this marble heart will ripple outward like circles in water, touching the lives of farmers, soldiers, and merchants far beyond the horizon. Power in Rome is not loud. It speaks through parchment and procession, through ritual and restraint. The forum begins to empty. The priests finish their prayers. The clerks close their ledgers. The guards take up their night stations at the entrances. The sound of sandals on stone fades into silence. Overhead, the first stars appear in the deepening sky. The heart of power sleeps lightly. Behind the grandeur and ceremony lies the constant awareness that the empire must be tended like a fire, never allowed to go out, never left entirely to burn on its own. And so, even as darkness settles over the 7 hills, a few lamps remain lit in the curia. Inside, a scribe continues to write, his hand steady, his pen scratching softly across the wax. The words will be dry by morning, ready to be read aloud to men who govern the world by sentences and seals. Outside, Rome exhales again. The noise fades, but the weight of the day lingers. The stones are still warm beneath the cooling air. The empire has spoken, and the city, vast and alive, prepares to dream beneath the glow of its own eternal order. Part 5, The Art of Cleanliness. The afternoon heat hangs heavy over Rome. The air above the streets wavers, and the scent of dust and stone fills every breath. From the hills to the riverbanks, people begin to seek relief. For many, that comfort lies not in rest or shade, but in the cool marble halls of the bathhouses. Along the wide avenue leading toward the baths of Caracalla, the sound of sandals striking stone grows steady. The gates stand open, framed by towering arches. Inside, the building glows in the golden light of the late day, a vast temple of water and relaxation. The facade rises high above the street, carved with scenes of sea gods and nymphs pouring water from empyre. Columns stretch upward like the trunks of ancient trees, holding a roof painted with fading frescoes of clouds and doves. The faint murmur of running water can already be heard from within. Visitors pass through the entrance one by one. Some arrive wrapped in light cloaks, carrying baskets of oils and towels. Others wear nothing more than simple tunics. Slaves accompany their masters, bearing perfumes, combs, and small bronze strigils for scraping the skin. The scent of olive oil and rose fills the air. Coins change hands at the door as attendants record names on wax tablets, ensuring that every visitor finds a place. Inside, the first chamber is the apoditerium, the dressing room. Rows of niches line the walls, each marked for personal belongings. The marble floor is cool beneath bare feet. The chatter of voices blends with the rustle of cloth as men and boys undress, folding their garments carefully or handing them to slaves. Laughter drifts between the walls. Here, there is no distinction of class. Senators, merchants, and common citizens stand side by side, stripped of the outer signs of rank. A servant moves through the crowd offering small cups of wine mixed with honey. The taste is sweet and slightly tart, refreshing after the heat of the streets. Nearby, another attendant sprinkles water on the floor to settle the dust. Everything is done with calm efficiency, practiced through countless repetitions of the same day. From the dressing room, the visitors move into the teparium, the warm hall. The air here is soft and humid, carrying the gentle scent of steam and limestone. Some sit on benches along the wall, talking quietly, while others stretch their limbs, preparing for the hotter chamber ahead. In the caldarium, the heart of the baths, heat reigns. The floor itself glows faintly with warmth from the hypocaust beneath, the network of tunnels where slaves feed wood into roaring fires that heat the air and water. Steam curls upward from a great circular pool surrounded by marble columns. The sound of water echoes against the domed ceiling, deep and rhythmic. Visitors sink slowly into the pool, their sighs mingling with the hiss of vapor. A man leans back against the edge, closing his eyes as the heat envelops him. The world outside, the markets, the noise, the politics dissolves into this moment of stillness. Two men beside him debate philosophy in low tones, their words slow and unhurried. A poet recites lines he has composed that morning, and the small group around him smiles with polite appreciation. The bathhouse is not merely a refuge from heat, but a sanctuary for the mind. Ideas move here as freely as the water itself. Attendants move among the bathers carrying bronze strigils. With steady hands, they scrape the skin clean of oil and sweat, then pour cool water to rinse it away. The process is rhythmic and almost ceremonial. The skin gleams under the lamplight, refreshed and soft. The scent of scented oil rises with each motion, blending with the faint trace of burning wood from the furnaces below. Through an archway lies the frigidarium, the cold chamber. Its water glints pale blue under the sun that filters through the open roof. After the heat of the caldarium, the shock of the cold pool is sharp and exhilarating. Men laugh as they plunge beneath the surface, their voices echoing in the vast space. The chill tightens the skin, the muscles come alive again, and the sense of renewal is complete. When they emerge, droplets roll down their bodies, falling onto the marble with the sound of soft rain. Outside the pools, the atmosphere is calm. Some recline on benches wrapped in towels, others talk quietly or play games of dice. Slaves move silently between them, carrying trays of fruit, figs, and sweet pastries. The faint clink of cups and the murmur of conversation fill the air. The bathhouse is more than a place of washing. It is the city's living heart of leisure, a world within the world where the empire's citizens come not only to cleanse the body, but to renew the spirit. Women, too, have their own baths, separated by walls but sharing the same sense of ritual. In their halls, the sound of laughter rises softly, mingled with the splash of water and the perfume of jasmine oil. They speak of family, of fashion, of small fortunes, and fleeting gossip. The baths are both sanctuary and stage, a place where the rhythms of daily life unfold without hurry or fear of judgment. In the outer gardens of the Thermae, visitors wander after bathing. The paths are lined with cypress and laurel. Fountains trickle gently into shallow basins where lotus flowers float. The air carries a trace of moisture from the nearby pools. Musicians play soft melodies on flutes, their notes mingling with the cooing of doves that nest beneath the eaves. The golden light of late afternoon filters through the trees, turning the marble statues a deep amber hue. Here, among the shaded colonnades, philosophers and poets gather. Some sit cross-legged on the ground, others recline on stone benches. They discuss politics, love, and the nature of the gods. Their voices are low and contemplative. One speaks of how the bath cleanses not just the body, but the soul, freeing it from the dust of ambition. The others nod, watching the ripples in a nearby pool as if the water itself agrees. Beyond the gardens lies the gymnasium, where athletes train in the open air. The sound of wooden weights striking the ground mingles with the laughter of young men racing along the track. Their skin glistens in the fading light, their muscles outlined in motion. Though the baths promise rest, they also celebrate vitality. To be Roman is to honor both strength and grace, labor and leisure. As the day drifts toward evening, the bathhouse begins to change tone. The crowds thin. Some visitors linger, unwilling to leave the calm behind. The attendants move more slowly now, collecting towels, pouring out the last of the oils, and extinguishing lamps one by one. The air grows cooler. The echo of water remains steady and eternal, like the heartbeat of the city itself. In the furnace rooms beneath the floor, the slaves continue their work. Sweat glistens on their backs as they feed wood into the roaring fires. The heat rises through the brick pillars, warming the rooms above. Their labor is invisible, yet essential. Without them, the luxury above would collapse into silence. For them, there is no bath, only the endless rhythm of toil. The contrast between their world and that of the bathers is as deep as the pools themselves. In one of the outer corridors, a young man pauses before a mosaic of Neptune, god of the sea. The figure, made of tiny blue and green tiles, seems almost to shimmer in the dim light. He touches the cool stone with his fingertips and whispers a brief prayer for safe journeys, for strength, for peace. Around him, the walls echo with the last footsteps of the day's visitors. Outside, the sky is turning to gold and rose. The towers of the bathhouse cast long shadows across the avenue. The city hums softly in the distance, preparing for evening. Those leaving the Thermae walk more slowly now, their faces calm, their movements unhurried. The noise of the streets feels muted, the air fresher. The experience of bathing lingers like perfume, gentle and steady. By the time the last attendants close the bronze doors, the building glows in the fading light like a great jewel. Steam still drifts from the roof vents, dissolving into the sky. The fires below continue to burn, waiting for the next day. The baths will reopen at dawn, as they have for generations, offering the same promise of renewal to whoever enters. For the Romans, cleanliness is more than a habit. It is a reflection of order, of civilization itself. The empire may stretch across deserts and seas, but its unity lives in such rituals, in water heated and shared, in the quiet harmony between body and city. The bath is both mirror and metaphor. As the marble halls are kept spotless, so too must Rome remain pure in form and strength. As twilight deepens, the final visitors drift home through streets lined with lamplight. Their skin is smooth, their minds unburdened. The city smells faintly of oil and smoke. In distant courtyards, fountains still whisper. The waters of Rome never stop flowing, and their sound carries a quiet message that life, even under the weight of empire, must find its moments of peace. Part 6, Bread and Rest. The heat of afternoon has reached its height. Sunlight presses against the walls like a living weight, and the air over Rome wavers in the brightness. The roar of the city softens as people withdraw from the streets, seeking shelter from the burning light. Work halts, voices fade, and the rhythm of Rome slows into quiet suspension. In shaded courtyards and narrow alleys, the same ritual unfolds as it has for generations. Doors are closed, shutters drawn, and torches extinguished. The baker has sold the last of his loaves and now leans against his doorway, wiping his hands on his apron. The smell of bread still hangs in the air, warm and comforting. He tears off a small piece from a broken loaf and eats it slowly, tasting the salt and grain as though it were a luxury. Across the street, a woman sits by her window, stirring a pot of lentils over a small fire. The sound of bubbling fills the silence. Her children, exhausted from morning play, sleep on woven mats nearby. The family's meal will be simple: lentils, bread, a few olives, and perhaps a slice of cheese if the market was kind. In the distance, she can still hear faint echoes of carts rolling along the cobbles, but they sound far away, softened by the stillness of the hour. In the richer quarters of the Palatine, the scene is quieter still. Servants move silently through cool atriums, closing bronze shutters to block the glare. The stone floors radiate the stored warmth of the day. Inside, the scent of olive oil and flowers drifts through the corridors. The master of the house reclines on a couch, eating grapes while his steward reads a letter aloud from a distant estate. His wife rests in another room, her hair unpinned, her eyes half closed. Even the fountains seem to whisper more softly, their streams slowed by the languor of the hour. The slaves take their brief rest in the shade of the courtyard wall. They share bread soaked in wine and talk quietly among themselves. A young boy pours water into a bowl so the others can wash their faces. The conversation turns to their families, those far away, those they barely remember. For a moment, the lines between master and servant blur. All share the same heat, the same hunger, the same desire for quiet. Outside the villas, the city lies still. The cries of the marketplace have ceased, and even the ever-restless dogs sleep in the shadow of the temples. Only the faint trickle of water from fountains breaks the silence. The sky above the city is an unbroken blue, shimmering over marble roofs and terracotta tiles. Far to the south, beyond the walls, the fields of the Campagna shimmer like gold in the haze. Farmers rest under olive trees, their tools laid beside them, their faces covered with cloth against the sun. In one of the insulae, the tall apartment houses of the poorer districts, the air is thick and close. Curtains made from rough linen hang in doorways to keep the heat at bay. A mother fans her child as he sleeps, brushing flies from his face. From a nearby room comes the faint plucking of a lyre, a simple tune repeated over and over until it becomes part of the afternoon's hum. The music drifts through the open windows, blending with the smell of cooking oil and smoke. At a tavern near the Subura, a few men remain seated at rough tables, too tired to move. Their conversation drifts between talk of work and complaint about the price of grain. The innkeeper wipes the counter with a damp cloth, his movements slow, unhurried. From the kitchen comes the sound of water poured into clay cups. The men drink without words, each lost in the quiet rhythm of rest. In the open courtyards of the baths, those who linger after washing recline on benches under the shade of cypress trees. Some read scrolls, others nap with towels folded beneath their heads. The air is filled with the scent of oil and warm stone. The sound of dripping water echoes gently through the colonnades. A butterfly lands on the edge of a marble basin, its wings opening and closing in slow rhythm. Even time seems to stretch and loosen in the warmth. By the river, the docks are nearly silent. The barges lie still, their ropes slack against the posts. The men who worked through the morning now sleep in the shadows of their hulls, using rolled cloaks as pillows. The Tiber glides past them without a sound, its surface broken only by the occasional fish. The reflection of the bridges shimmers and dissolves in the rippling light. The silence of midday is not emptiness. It is a living pause, a space between the motions of the city. Rome breathes in, holding itself still before releasing again into evening. The noises that remain are gentle, the cooing of doves, the soft rustle of leaves stirred by distant breezes, the whisper of fabric as someone turns in sleep. Even the guards at the forum gates move slower, leaning on their spears as they watch the empty streets. In a modest house near the Cillian Hill, a family gathers for their meal. They sit on low stools around a wooden table. The father divides a loaf of bread, dipping each piece into olive oil. The mother passes around a bowl of beans seasoned with garlic. Their laughter is quiet but warm. They speak of small things, the neighbor's new roof, the next market day, a cousin's child soon to be married. For them, the empire's vastness feels far away. What matters is this moment, the taste of food, the cool air after heat, and the closeness of home. In the gardens of the wealthier districts, servants lay out simple feasts beneath the pergolas. Bowls of fruit gleam under the light, figs, pomegranates, pears, and grapes. Clay pitchers of chilled wine rest in shallow basins of water to keep them cool. The master's friends recline on couches draped with fabric. Their laughter is soft, their words unhurried. A slave pours the wine, and the liquid glows ruby red as it fills each cup. They toast to health, to fortune, to the quiet gift of shade. From somewhere nearby, the soft notes of a flute drift across the gardens. The melody rises and falls like a sigh. Bees move lazily between flowers, their hum a gentle counterpoint to the music. The air carries the scent of rosemary and crushed thyme. In the distance, the faint rumble of the city is barely audible. For a few precious hours, Rome seems at peace with itself. In the poorest corners of the city, the same pause brings a different kind of comfort. Laborers lie stretched out on doorsteps, their faces turned toward the faint breeze that moves through the alleyways. Some eat while they rest, tearing chunks of bread with rough hands. Children sit nearby, sharing a handful of dates. An old woman hums softly as she shells beans into a clay pot. Even here, where struggle is constant, there is a sense of rhythm, of balance between effort and release. The city's temples glow faintly under the afternoon sun. Their marble columns shimmer with heat, and the steps are too warm to touch. Inside, the air is cool and scented with incense. A priest stands before the altar of Vesta, goddess of the hearth, tending the eternal flame. The fire flickers softly, undisturbed by the world beyond. A single acolyte kneels nearby, whispering prayers for the safety of the city. The silence inside feels vast, untouched by time. Farther north, near the gardens of Sallust, the wealthy walk under shaded porticos. They speak in low voices of poetry and politics, though neither truly interests them in the heat. Their sandals brush against the gravel paths, and their shadows stretch long on the ground. In one corner, a painter sits beneath an olive tree, sketching the play of sunlight on water. His lines are delicate, precise, and unhurried. Like everyone else, he moves in rhythm with the day's slower pulse. As the afternoon wanes, the air begins to shift. The harsh glare softens to a warmer glow. A faint wind rises from the river, stirring the dust and cooling the stones. The voices of the city begin to return, Tentative at first, a merchant calling to his servant, a mother waking her children, a cart creaking down the street. The stillness dissolves gently, replaced by the first murmurs of evening. In the bakeries, fires are lit again to prepare bread for the night meal. The smell of flour and smoke fills the streets once more. In courtyards, lamps are hung, their small flames flickering against the deepening gold of the sky. Families gather for their second meal, smaller and simpler than the first. Wine is poured, laughter grows louder, and the quiet rest gives way to renewed motion. The bathers who lingered through the afternoon now leave the thermae refreshed. Their skin glows from heat and oil, their hair damp, their bodies light. They step into the evening air as if reborn. The contrast between the cool breeze and their warm skin feels almost divine. By the time the first shadows lengthen across the forum, the pause of midday is complete. The city wakes again with new energy, its people restored. The sound of footsteps returns, the smell of cooking fills the streets, and conversation rises like the tide. The rest has done its work. For a few quiet hours, Rome forgot its ambition, its noise, its endless striving. It remembered instead the simple rhythm of breath, the necessity of food, and the sweetness of shade. Now, with the setting sun gilding the rooftops, the city opens its eyes once more, ready to move toward evening, steady, alive, and eternal. Part 7, The Workshop and the Forge. The heat of the day begins to ease. Shadows stretch longer across the streets, and a faint breeze drifts in from the river, stirring the curtains that hang in open doorways. Rome stirs again. From the stillness of rest, the hum of labor returns, slow at first, then steady, gathering strength like the rising of a tide. In every quarter, the craftsmen awaken their tools. The sound of hammers striking metal rises from narrow alleys, sharp and measured. Sparks leap in flashes of gold that fade almost before the eye can follow them. The air smells of smoke, oil, and iron. The blacksmith's forge, quiet during the noon heat, now glows bright again, its flames fed by bellows that wheeze with rhythm. Inside, the smith wipes sweat from his brow and steadies a piece of glowing metal on the anvil. Each blow lands with purpose. The iron bends and shapes itself beneath his hands, slowly taking the form of a hinge, a nail, or perhaps the tip of a plow. The apprentices move quickly under his command. One turns the bellows to feed the fire, another brings water to quench the finished piece. Steam rises in white clouds, filling the dim room with heat and mist. The floor is covered in a thin layer of ash that softens the sound of their steps. Though the work is hard, their rhythm is calm and unbroken. The smith, the forge is both workshop and temple. Here, skill and endurance become one. Not far away, in a street known for stone carving, the sculptors return to their blocks of marble. The sound of iron chisels tapping against stone joins the music of the city's renewed labor. The dust of their work floats in the late light like pale smoke. One sculptor kneels before the unfinished figure of a youth, his fingers tracing the outline of a face that seems almost alive. With each small strike, a fragment of marble falls away and form emerges from roughness. The sculptor's eyes narrow, studying shadow and curve, seeing not what is but what must be revealed. In the workshop next door, a mosaic artist sits cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by bowls of colored tiles. Tiny pieces of glass and stone shimmer in shades of blue, green, and gold. Using a small iron pick, he sets each tessera into a bed of wet plaster, building patterns that catch the fading sunlight. From this patient labor will come floors that glitter beneath senators' feet and walls that seem to hold captured stars. The artist hums softly as he works, the sound lost among the quiet of concentration. Farther down the street, the potters reopen their kilns. The smell of clay and smoke mingles with the warmth of evening. A woman stands before her wheel, pressing her palms against the spinning surface, shaping a vessel as smooth as river stone. Her arms move with fluid precision, learned from years of repetition. Around her, shelves are lined with rows of cooling pottery, their colors deepening from gray to red as the heat does its work. The clay cools slowly, hardening into permanence. In Rome, even the simplest cup carries the memory of the hand that shaped it. In the tanner's quarter, vats of dye release a sharp, earthy scent that clings to the air. Workers stir the mixtures with long wooden poles, turning hides that will soon become belts, sandals, and armor. Their hands are stained dark from their trade, their clothes splashed with color. Though the smell drives many away, to the tanners it means livelihood. They speak to one another through the noise of water and leather, their voices low and familiar. As the light softens, the carpenters open the wide doors of their workshops. Shavings curl from planks of pine and cedar, falling in pale ribbons onto the floor. The air smells clean and sharp, filled with resin and wood dust. A carpenter leans over his workbench, guiding a plane across the surface of a doorframe, the motion steady and sure. Another fits a joint with gentle pressure, tapping it into place with the side of his hand. The sound of saws, hammers, and mallets becomes the evening's chorus. Every house, every temple, every ship owes its life to this steady rhythm of hands and tools. The sun lowers behind the hills, turning the city to amber. The rooftops glow, and the shadows of cranes and scaffolds stretch across the unfinished buildings. At the edge of the forum, masons repair a cracked column, mixing lime and sand into thick mortar. Their movements are slow but confident, shaped by habit. One man whistles softly as he works, his tune mingling with the faint clang of hammers from the smithies below. In the quarter of the goldsmiths, the work is quieter, more delicate. The clink of fine metal and the hiss of small flames replace the heavy rhythm of forges. Inside a narrow room, a craftsman sits before a low table scattered with tiny tools. A single lamp burns beside him, its light catching on threads of gold. He bends close, soldering a chain with a breath as careful as prayer. On another bench, a young apprentice polishes a ring until it gleams. The air smells faintly of molten metal and beeswax. In these quiet rooms, beauty is born grain by grain. Outside, the streets are alive again. Children run past the open doors, laughing as they chase a rolling hoop. The clang of the smith's hammer echoes like a heartbeat through the alleys. Above, neighbors lean out from balconies to talk, passing words and news from window to window. The smell of roasting grain drifts through the air from the bakeries beginning their night work. As daylight fades, torches are lit inside the workshops. The flames flicker against the walls, casting shifting patterns of light. The forges glow red through the doorways, their smoke rising like dark banners into the cooling sky. The artisans work on, unbothered by the coming night. In their world, the setting of the sun is no reason to stop. The glow of their fires is enough. At the edge of the Sabora, a cobbler sits by his doorway stitching a pair of sandals for a customer who will come tomorrow. His wife sits beside him spinning thread, her hands moving in a slow circle. The smell of leather fills the air. From somewhere nearby comes the gentle rhythm of a hammer striking wood, marking the time like a slow drum. The couple works in silence, content with the familiarity of their task. Across the city, near the river, shipbuilders labor in the fading light. The hull of a vessel lies half finished, its ribs rising like the bones of a giant creature. Workers climb along the scaffolds, fastening planks with iron nails. The smell of tar and pitch is heavy, clinging to their hair and skin. The work is demanding but proud. Each ship that slides into the Tiber carries not only goods but the reputation of those who built her. As darkness thickens, the foreman calls for the men to stop. They lay down their tools, stretch their arms, and stand for a moment in silence, watching the last light fade across the river. In the marble quarries beyond the city, workers strike stone with steady rhythm, sparks flash where metal meets rock. Each blow breaks away a fragment, revealing the smooth surface beneath. The blocks will be hauled by oxen to the workshops where sculptors and builders will transform them into temples, statues, and homes. The journey from raw stone to polished art begins here, in sweat and echo. As the evening deepens, the city's rhythm slows once more. The forges dim, their fires covered until morning. The blacksmith plunges the final piece of metal into water, and the hiss fades to quiet. He hangs his hammer on the wall, wipes his hands on his apron, and steps outside. The air feels cool on his skin. He looks up at the rising stars and smiles faintly, satisfied with the day's work. In a nearby workshop, the sculptor covers his unfinished statue with a sheet of linen. The young face he carved seems to sleep beneath it. The mosaic artist rinses his hands in a basin, watching the colors swirl away in the water. The potter closes her kiln, sealing in the warmth that will finish her creations by dawn. Each act of closure carries a kind of reverence. From the hills, the view of the city is one of quiet transformation. What began the day in noise and heat now glows with the softer light. The windows of the workshops flicker like small stars. The smell of metal and fire gives way to the scent of evening air and distant rain. The artisans leave their tools behind, but their craft remains in every corner of Rome, in the doors that close, the lamps that shine, the streets that curve beneath their feet. For these men and women, the workshop is more than a place of labor. It is a space of continuity where skill is handed down like a language, and each creation is a quiet assertion of belonging. In their hands, raw matter becomes shape, and shape becomes meaning. Their work is not recorded in speeches or decrees, but it endures in the city's bones. By nightfall, the last fires fade. The clang of iron is replaced by the softer sounds of evening, voices, footsteps, the call of vendors preparing for the night meal. The artisans return to their homes, their hands still warm from their craft. In the quiet that follows, Rome breathes again, steady and full, resting upon the unseen labor of those who build, mend, and make. Part 8. The Scholar's Hour. The last glow of the sun fades beyond the western hills, and the air above Rome begins to cool. The city, still warm from the day's heat, exhales a long breath of smoke, dust, and distant laughter. One by one, the sounds of labor recede, and a quieter rhythm takes their place. The hour of reflection begins. It is the time when minds, rather than hands, shape the life of the city, when scholars, poets, and teachers claim their share of the day. In the courtyards of villas and the shaded porticos near the Palatine, oil lamps are lit. Their flames waver gently, casting golden circles on the marble walls. The smell of olive oil and warm air mingles with the faint perfume of flowering vines. A servant trims the wick of a lamp, adjusting its glow until it burns clear and steady. Around low tables, scrolls are unfurled and voices rise in measured tones. A philosopher stands before a small group of listeners, his face illuminated by lamplight. His toga hangs loosely about his shoulders, his hands moving slowly as he speaks. The topic tonight is the nature of virtue. The listeners nod, some thoughtful, others lost in their own reflections. A young student sitting cross-legged on the floor traces a line on his wax tablet, recording the words as they are spoken. In this space, wisdom is not a performance, but a shared quiet, a search for order in the noise of life. Across the city, in a teacher's room near the forum, the evening lesson continues. The windows are open to the breeze, and the scent of cooling stone fills the air. A small group of students sits around a wooden table, their wax tablets resting on their knees. The teacher, an old man with ink-stained fingers, reads aloud from a scroll of Homer. His voice rises and falls like the rhythm of waves, steady and patient. Now and then he pauses to explain a word or to ask a question that requires thought rather than repetition. The students answer carefully, their faces lit by the flicker of a single lamp. Outside, the footsteps of passers-by echo faintly through the streets, but within these walls the only sound is the teacher's voice and the gentle scratching of styluses against wax. In a modest apartment above the Sabura, a scribe works by candlelight. The flame burns low, its light trembling over the parchment before him. He copies a legal decree sent from the Senate, his handwriting neat and deliberate. Each line is measured with care, each stroke an act of quiet devotion to the craft of writing. Around him, the night grows louder, neighbors talking through open windows, children laughing before sleep, but he remains focused. For him, the written word is not merely communication, it is permanence, the preservation of order in a world that constantly changes. Beyond the walls of the scholars' homes and offices, the libraries hold their own serenity. The great library of the Porticus Octavii stands in near silence. Its marble halls are lined with shelves filled with scrolls, each labeled with careful marks in red ink. The air smells of papyrus and resin. A custodian moves through the aisles holding a small lamp to read the titles. He pauses to dust a shelf, then opens a window to let in the cool air from the river. Outside, the city hums, but within these walls, the past waits patiently. Here are the voices of poets, scientists, philosophers, and historians bound in fragile rolls of fiber and ink. The empire's memory sleeps behind thin threads of linen and wax. As evening deepens, the forum's empty, but not entirely. Beneath the porticos, small circles of men gather to talk. Some debate politics in low voices, others recite lines of poetry. A young orator practices his delivery to an audience of friends, his gestures exaggerated, his tone dramatic. They applaud softly, offering advice and laughter in equal measure. From nearby taverns comes the faint clinking of cups and the scent of wine. The streets are alive yet calm, like a sea at rest. In a garden overlooking the Tiber, a senator hosts a gathering of writers. The tables are set with small plates of figs and cheese and pitchers of watered wine stand within easy reach. The air carries the smell of roses and freshly trimmed myrtle. Guests recline on couches, speaking in turns, their voices low and even. One reads a new poem aloud, verses about the river, about time and impermanence. The others listen, their eyes reflecting the flicker of the lamps. When he finishes, they sit in silence for a moment, letting the words settle like dust. Then another begins to speak, and the conversation resumes its gentle flow. At the edge of the garden, a fountain murmurs. The water catches the light of the lamps, rippling in gold and shadow. A moth circles above it, drawn by the glow. The night feels suspended, held between sound and stillness. For the scholars and thinkers of Rome, this is the true heart of the day, a time not for work or command, but for thought. In these hours, the city seems to shrink and expand at once, vast in scope yet intimate in its pursuit of knowledge. Farther down the hill, near the markets, a philosopher known for his plain speech gathers a crowd of common citizens. His robe is simple, his feet dusty from walking the streets. He speaks not in Latin, but in the rough mix of tongues that the people understand. His subject is duty, the virtue of honest labor, the dignity of the ordinary. The crowd listens, some curious, others skeptical. A few nod, recognizing their own lives in his words. When he finishes, there is no applause, only quiet respect. He bows slightly and walks away, leaving the listeners to carry his thoughts into their own homes.
In the Insuli, learning takes humbler forms. A mother teaches her children to read the names carved on household charms. A father explains the meaning of the letters on a coin. Education in Rome does not belong to the elite. Laid alone, it is a thread that winds through every layer of life, binding the city together through the act of understanding.
By the 9th hour, the lamps across the city burn brighter. The streets glow softly, their stones reflecting the scattered light. From the high terraces of the Palatine to the narrow lanes of the Subura, small pools of illumination mark where minds are still awake. Some study scrolls of history, others write letters or keep accounts. The quiet hum of concentration fills the night, mingling with the faint rustle of wind through open shutters. A poet sits at his window, writing verses about the city itself. He listens to the rhythm of distant footsteps and the sound of a water carrier passing below. The words come slowly, drawn from the memory of the day, the shimmer of the river, the hammering of the forges, the laughter of children in the alleys. He writes until the flame of his lamp flickers low, then lays down his stylus and watches the smoke rise in thin spirals. For him, the poem is not a declaration but a gesture of gratitude, an attempt to capture the fleeting calm between days. In a small room overlooking the forum, a philosopher finishes his own writing. He sets down his pen, stretches his stiff fingers, and gazes out at the darkened square. The statues of emperors and gods stand pale under the moonlight. Their shadows stretch across the stones like memories. He thinks of all the voices that have filled this space, orators, senators, beggars, and scholars, and feels a quiet kinship with them all. Knowledge, he realizes, is not a treasure kept by the few, but a river that flows through generations, always renewed, never still. Midnight approaches. The scholars extinguish their lamps, the teachers roll up their scrolls, and the poets close their windows. The night deepens into silence. Yet even as Rome sleeps, the thoughts born in these hours will endure, carried in the minds of students, in the ink of scribes, in the faint echo of words whispered under lamplight. The city rests again, but its intellect does not. Beneath the stillness, the pulse of curiosity continues to beat, soft and steady, keeping time with the quiet flow of the Tiber beyond the walls. Rome, in its wisdom, knows that the empire of the mind is the only one that never truly fades. Part 9. The Voices of Faith. Evening deepens across the 7 hills. The last traces of gold fade from the rooftops, leaving the marble of temples bathed in soft blue shadow. The streets cool, the air thick with the mingled scents of smoke, oil, and incense. From every quarter of the city, the faint sound of prayers begins to rise. It is not loud or uniform, but layered and continuous, 1,000 small voices speaking at once. Together they form the breath of Rome's spiritual life, a low murmur that fills the night. At the heart of the city, the great temples stand like anchors of stone. Their columns glow faintly in the lamplight, their steps worn smooth by centuries of worship. The Temple of Jupiter crowns the Capitoline Hill, its doors standing open to the dark sky. Within, the air is heavy with the smell of burning myrrh. A priest moves slowly before the altar, his white robes swaying with each step. He sprinkles wine onto the flames, watching them hiss and flare, then murmurs words that have been repeated in this place for hundreds of years. The ritual is simple, almost quiet, but its meaning is vast, a conversation between the mortal and the divine, carried out under the watchful stars. A small group of citizens kneels nearby. Some have come to give thanks, others to ask for mercy. A mother presses her forehead to the stone, whispering prayers for her child's health. A soldier bows his head, hoping for safe return from his next campaign. The temple echoes faintly with their voices, mingling with the crackle of fire and the rustle of cloth. Outside, the city hums beyond the walls, but within this space, time seems to slow, reduced to the rhythm of breath and flame. Down in the streets below, smaller shrines come to life. At nearly every crossroads, there stands a small altar dedicated to the Laras, the household guardians of each neighborhood. Children light small clay lamps and place offerings of bread and fruit before the statues. Their parents watch from nearby doorways, smiling softly as the flames flicker. The scent of smoke drifts upward, joining countless others in the night air. Rome's faith is not confined to the grand temples. It dwells in every corner, every threshold, every whispered wish. In one modest home near the Esquiline Hill, a family gathers around their household shrine. It is a small niche in the wall holding two tiny figures carved from wood. The father lights a lamp and pours a few drops of wine into a shallow bowl. His wife places a sprig of rosemary beside it, her movements deliberate and gentle. Their children clasp their hands, repeating a prayer they have learned since infancy, a prayer for peace, for protection, and for the return of the next day. The light from the lamp glows softly against the clay walls, throwing their shadows together.
Beyond the city center, the Temple of Vesta glows with a steady fire. It is smaller than many others, circular in form, but none is more sacred. Inside, the Vestal virgins tend the eternal flame, feeding it with dry wood collected from the nearby grove. Their faces are calm, their movements practiced.
The silence is broken only by the soft crackle of fire and the gentle sound of sandals on stone. To them, the flame is Rome itself, its heart, its spirit, its unbroken line through time. As long as it burns, the city endures. One of the younger priestesses kneels to add fresh kindling. The light plays across her face, illuminating her concentration. She has served here since childhood, her life bound to this sacred duty. Outside, people pass by without seeing her, but her hands maintain the fire that watches over them all. When she rises, the elder priestess nods approvingly. The two exchange no words, none are needed. Their task is eternal, and their silence is its language. Farther along the slope of the Aventine, the Temple of Diana stands half in shadow beneath the trees. Its marble gleams pale beneath the moon. The smell of pine and damp earth fills the air. A group of women arrives carrying baskets of fruit and small garlands of flowers. They move quietly, their bare feet soft against the ground. At the altar, they lay down their offerings and stand in a circle. One begins to sing, her voice low and steady. The others join in, their tones weaving together in a song older than the stones around them. The melody drifts through the night like smoke, gentle yet strong, a hymn to the goddess of the hunt and the moon. In the lower districts, near the river, worship takes humbler forms. Sailors returning from the docks light candles to Neptune, god of the sea, setting them afloat on small wooden boards. The flames drift slowly down the current, reflections trembling on the surface of the Tiber. Each light is a prayer, for calm waters, for safe passage, for the fortune to return home. On the banks, the sailors watch until the last candle disappears around the bend. Then they shoulder their nets and walk away, trusting the river to carry their hopes onward. At the edge of the forum, a philosopher stands among a few students and speaks softly about the gods. He says they are not far away, but present in all things, in the air, in the earth, in the fire that warms and destroys. His words are thoughtful rather than pious, but those who listen hear reverence in his tone. For him, Philosophy is not the rejection of belief, but its deepening, a bridge between understanding and awe. The students listen closely, their faces lit by the lamps of the street. When he finishes, they thank him quietly and walk home in thoughtful silence. As the night grows darker, the city's countless temples gleam like islands of light. From the Capitoline to the Aventine, from the Forum to the farthest gates, fires and lamps burn in offering. The air hums with faint sounds, the ringing of bells, the murmur of chants, the shuffle of sandals on stone. Priests close their doors for the night, tying seals to the handles to mark the sanctity within. Guards take their posts, standing with spears crossed before the entrances. The light of their torches flickers against the carvings of gods and heroes, bringing the marble faces to life for a moment before fading again into stillness. At a small temple devoted to Mercury, a merchant kneels before the altar. His clothes smell faintly of spice and sea salt, remnants of his trade. He places a handful of coins before the statue, not as payment, but as gratitude for the day's fortune. His prayer is short and sincere. When he rises, he touches the doorway with his fingertips, a gesture both respectful and habitual. The gods of Rome are many, yet each receives devotion in the same quiet rhythm, offering, thanks, and release. In another quarter near the Gardens of the Wealthy, a poet stands at his balcony and looks toward the stars. The constellations shimmer faintly above the city's glow. He raises a small cup of wine and offers it to the sky, dedicating it to Apollo, patron of light and inspiration. The act is solitary, but filled with meaning. In his heart, he believes that the same divine spark that burns in the heavens touches every act of creation on earth. He sets down his cup and begins to write, his stylus moving slowly over the wax tablet as the first night insects begin to sing. In the slums near the outskirts, faith takes on its own form. A mother tells her children stories of the household spirits who guard their small room. She points to the corners and teaches them to say thank you before they sleep. They listen with wide eyes, repeating her words carefully. To them, these unseen protectors are as real as the fire in the lamp. When they finally close their eyes, the mother watches them for a while, her face soft in the lamplight, before whispering a prayer of her own, one that needs no temple to be heard. By midnight, the greater temples have grown still. The fires burn low, the priests rest, and the worshippers have gone home. Yet Rome remains alive with the faint residue of faith. Smoke rises from the last embers of offerings. The smell of incense lingers on the wind. Somewhere, a bell tolls the hour, its sound deep and slow. It echoes across the hills, through courtyards and alleys, through palaces and taverns alike. The gods of Rome are many, yet together they form a single presence, vast, enduring, and interwoven with the lives of those who call upon them. They dwell not only in statues or altars, but in the quiet gestures of the people, the lighting of a lamp, the bow of a head, the murmured thanks before sleep. As the city darkens further, the Tiber gleams under the moon, carrying with it the light of the last floating candles. The prayers of sailors, priests, mothers, and children merge with the sound of water and vanish downstream. The night returns to silence. The fires fade, but faith remains, unseen yet alive, whispering through the stones and arches of the eternal city. Part 10, The Feast at Dusk. The air over Rome has turned soft and golden. The final embers of sunset linger above the hills, and the lamps along the streets flicker to life one by one. The hum of conversation begins to rise again, not as the rush of day, but as a slower, gentler murmur, the sound of people gathering for food and company.
In every district, fires are being kindled. The rhythm is the same from palace to alleyway, the scraping of flint, the flare of the first spark, the slow bloom of light that chases back the dark. Pots are set on stoves, wine jars uncorked, bread sliced.
For Romans, the evening meal is more than sustenance. It is a return to warmth, a moment when the city feels less like a machine of empire and more like a collection of homes. In the poorer quarters near the Sabura, families sit on stools outside their doorways. The air there is thick with the scent of lentils, onions, and bread toasted on small clay stoves. Children pass bowls from hand to hand, laughing between mouthfuls. A man carves salted fish into thin slices, sharing it with neighbors who sit close to catch the lamplight. Their laughter carries through the narrow lanes, softened by the echo of stone walls. For them, dinner is brief but precious, a pause before another day of work begins. Inside the nearby taverns, soldiers and laborers crowd around rough wooden tables. The light is dim, the walls stained with smoke. Clay cups clink together as they toast to the day's survival. The tavern keeper moves among them with practiced speed, filling cups from a jug of watered wine. From the kitchen comes the sound of sizzling meat, the smell of pepper and vinegar rising into the air. Music drifts faintly from a corner where a man plays a reed pipe. His song is simple, yet it makes the whole room sway with its rhythm. The soldiers sing along, their voices rough but content. In contrast, on the hills above, the wealthy dine in marble tricliniums that glow with the light of bronze lamps. Servants move like shadows between couches, carrying trays of fruit, cheese, and bread. The diners recline on their sides, leaning on cushions embroidered with thread of gold. They eat slowly, savoring each taste, each story. The room is filled with the soft sound of voices, of gentle laughter, of cups touching in quiet toasts. The scent of honeyed wine mingles with that of myrrh from a burning censer. At one such feast, a senator hosts guests beneath a painted ceiling that depicts Apollo riding his chariot through the sky. The guests speak of poetry, of the news from the provinces, of the latest decree announced in the forum. The servant offers figs soaked in wine, their sweetness a small miracle of the season. Another pours water over their hands before the next course. Between each dish, conversation flows without haste. To dine in Rome is an art measured not by hunger but by time. In a corner of the same house, slaves eat their meal together, seated on the floor near the kitchen hearth. Their food is simpler but warm, porridge mixed with oil and garlic, small pieces of bread, a few olives. They speak in low voices, laughing softly, sharing stories from the day. The sound of their laughter echoes faintly into the hall above, unnoticed by those reclining at the table, yet their joy is no less real. Elsewhere in the city, the bathers who left the Thermae walk home through streets alive with light. The smell of baking, roasting, and wine fills the air. At the crossroads, vendors sell small hot dishes, chickpeas roasted with salt, thin strips of meat cooked on skewers, pastries filled with dates. People gather in groups to eat as they walk, their faces glowing in the torchlight. The city feels renewed, its earlier stillness replaced by warmth and motion. Down by the Tiber, a group of sailors share their meal beside the moored barges. They sit on overturned crates, their backs against the hull of a ship. A small fire burns between them, casting orange reflections on the water. One man plays a short tune on a wooden flute, while the others eat roasted fish wrapped in leaves. The sound of the current mixes with the rhythm of their laughter. Above them, the lights of the city shimmer on the surface of the river, trembling like stars caught in motion. At the temple of Vesta, the sacred flame burns steadily through the night. A priestess steps outside for a moment and looks down at the city below. She can see torches and windows glowing in every direction, each one a small echo of the fire she tends. The sight fills her with quiet pride. Rome, in all its vastness, feels united in this moment by light, divine and human, eternal and fleeting. She returns to her post, her white robes brushing against the stone floor as she moves. In the homes of the middle class, dinners unfold in courtyards open to the night sky. A mother lays out bread and fruit on a wooden table while her husband pours wine for their guests. Their children chase one another between the pillars until called to sit. The conversation drifts between family matters and the small wonders of daily life. Someone tells a story about a dream, another laughs at a bit of gossip from the market. The light from the household lamps glows against the plastered walls, giving the scene a gentle warmth that feels almost timeless. On a balcony overlooking the forum, a poet eats alone. His dinner is simple: cheese, bread, and a cup of wine. Below him, he can hear the faint sounds of musicians playing somewhere in the streets. He lifts his cup in a quiet toast to the unseen performers and then to the city itself. To him, the noise of Rome is music, each voice another instrument in an endless composition. He takes a slow sip of wine and begins to write, capturing the movement of light on the rooftops and the murmuring of the crowds. At the same hour, in a small villa beyond the walls, a family gathers outdoors beneath a trellis of vines. The stars have begun to appear, pale against the twilight. The father carves slices of roasted lamb while his wife pours wine into clay cups. Their children pass around a bowl of olives, their hands glistening with oil. Crickets sing in the fields beyond the walls, and the air smells of grass and wood smoke. When the meal is finished, they sit together in silence, watching the fireflies drift through the vines. As the evening grows darker, the city glows brighter. Torches burn at every corner, their light dancing on the stone streets. The laughter of diners spills from open windows, blending with the sounds of music and conversation. The faint ring of a bell marks the changing hour, and the hum of Rome settles into a steady rhythm. The feast of the city is everywhere, in palaces and taverns, in alleys and gardens, wherever the simple act of eating binds people together. In one of the city's grand houses, dessert is served: sweet pastries filled with honey and nuts, plates of ripe fruit, bowls of cool water perfumed with mint. The host raises his cup and recites a few lines from a poet he admires. His guests respond with applause, the sound soft and sincere. They speak of philosophy, of love, of the latest whispers from the Senate, their words gentle as the lamps begin to burn low. The night around them feels endless, the conversation unhurried. Back in the taverns, the tone is louder. Jokes turn into songs and songs into laughter. A man stands on a bench and recites a crude poem that makes even the soldiers laugh until they wipe tears from their eyes. The innkeeper smiles as he refills their cups. For all their noise, there is affection in it, the rough kind born of shared fatigue and cheap wine. Outside, a passerby smiles as the laughter reaches the street, the sound carrying upward into the night. From the hills, the view of Rome is breathtaking. The city stretches in every direction, its lamps shimmering like a sea of gold. The air carries the faint scent of bread, oil, and smoke. Every sound, every breath of the city feels alive with warmth and contentment. The hour of dinner has passed, but its peace lingers. The streets quieten again as people finish their meals and withdraw into their homes. The fires burn lower, the voices fade to murmurs. Across the rooftops, the stars brighten. The feast at dusk has done its work, weaving connection through food, laughter, and light. For a city so vast, it is a moment of unity. The senator and the soldier, the merchant and the mother, all sharing the same evening sky, all warmed by the same glow. Rome rests in fullness, fed not only by its bread and wine, but by the comfort of its own enduring life. Part 11, The Games of the People. The night has settled over Rome, but the city is far from sleep. Across the 7 hills, the glow of torches and the echo of footsteps fill the air. The day's work and the evening meal have passed, and now the people turn toward one of their greatest pleasures, the games. For Romans, these gatherings are more than amusement. They are a celebration of life, of community, of belonging to a city whose heart beats in rhythm with spectacle. From every district, citizens move toward the arenas. Families walk together, children holding their parents' hands, faces bright with anticipation. Vendors call from the corners, selling roasted nuts, sweet wine, and small pastries wrapped in leaves. The smell of food and the murmur of thousands of voices mingle in the night air. The streets glow with torchlight, flickering on the polished helmets of soldiers who guide the crowd and keep the way clear. The great amphitheater stands like a mountain of stone. Its arches rise high above the streets, each one lit from within by lamps that cast shifting shadows on the walls. The sound of drums rolls faintly from the interior, a deep, rhythmic pulse that stirs excitement even before the gates are reached. The people pass through the entrances, climbing the steps to their seats. Inside, the arena glows with hundreds of torches, their flames reflected on the white marble tiers. The air smells of oil, smoke, and human warmth. The evening games are about to begin. Though the grand spectacles of battle and blood belong to other hours, the night has its own entertainments, musicians, dancers, acrobats, and performers who bring joy to a people who have worked and worshipped from dawn until dusk. The crowd quiets as the first performer steps into the light. A troupe of musicians takes their place on a small raised platform. The first sound is that of the flute, clear and bright. Then the deep beat of drums follows, steady as a heartbeat. The music spreads through the amphitheater, echoing off the curved walls. Dancers appear, their tunics of colored cloth catching the torchlight as they move in graceful rhythm. The crowd begins to clap, their hands striking together in time with the music. The sound rises, a wave of approval that fills the night. In the upper seats, a group of craftsmen watch with wide smiles. Their hands are still rough from labor, their faces lined from the day's heat, yet here they are equals to the senators and merchants below. The amphitheater erases difference, all eyes are drawn to the same center, all hearts lifted by the same rhythm. When the dancers finish, acrobats take the stage. They climb ropes that hang from the rafters, twisting and leaping through the air. Gasps rise from the crowd as they fall and catch themselves at the last moment, their bodies shining with sweat in the flickering light. The performance is both art and courage, and the people reward it with thunderous applause. Outside the amphitheater, the same spirit thrives in smaller spaces. At open squares and crossroads, performers gather their own crowds. A storyteller stands on a wooden box, his voice rising above the noise as he recounts tales of heroes, gods, and lovers. His words flow with rhythm and humor. The children listen wide-eyed, the adults laugh softly, and coins clink into his bowl. In another street, a juggler tosses torches into the air, their fire trailing lines of gold against the dark. The crowd cheers each time he catches them with effortless grace. Near the river, a troupe of actors performs a short play. Their stage is no more than a few planks set on barrels, but their gestures are grand and clear. They wear masks painted with exaggerated expressions, joy, sorrow, anger, so that even the furthest spectators can see their emotions. The story is familiar, a comedy about mistaken identities and foolish lovers. Laughter ripples through the crowd. For a little while, the troubles of the day disappear into shared amusement. In the great Circus Maximus, another kind of excitement builds. Though the chariot races will not begin until morning, workers and spectators gather even now to prepare. The massive track lies quiet under the moon, its long curve fading into shadow. Vendors set up their stands, filling baskets with bread, olives, and wine. A few charioteers walk the track, testing the ground, running their fingers through the sand. Their horses stamp in the stables nearby, restless and proud. Even in stillness, the air feels charged with energy, as though the earth itself remembers the thunder of hooves. From the hills, the glow of the circus and amphitheater merges into a single golden haze. The sounds of music and laughter drift upward, carried by the evening breeze. The temples, the baths, the markets, all have fallen quiet, but here the heart of the city still beats strong. The games are not simply diversion, they are communion. Through spectacle, Rome reminds itself of its own unity, its own rhythm, its vast and shared identity. A senator sits in his private box, watching the crowd as much as the performers. The torches illuminate faces of every age and station. The young cheer loudly, their voices carrying high into the night. The old smile quietly, remembering other games, other nights. To the senator, this is Rome itself, not in marble or decree, but in the living pulse of its people. In the stands below, a young couple sits close, sharing a cup of wine. They laugh softly, speaking in whispers between the cheers. Around them, strangers exchange comments, share food, or pass small flasks of wine down the rows. In this moment, friendship comes easily. The boundaries that mark daily life, class, language, labor, blur under the glow of firelight. As the last performance begins, silence falls again. A single musician steps forward carrying a lyre. He plays slowly, each note clear and bright against the hum of the crowd. The melody is old, older than the city itself, said to have been written when Rome was still a cluster of huts along the Tiber. The music drifts upward, mingling with the smoke of the torches. When the final chord fades, the audience sits in silence for a moment before breaking into applause. When the games end, the crowd rises in unison. The torches are lifted high as people begin to file out into the streets. The sound of footsteps fills the air, a soft thunder that echoes through the arches. Vendors shout last offers of food, musicians play short farewell tunes, and laughter trails into the night. The amphitheater empties slowly, leaving behind only the faint smell of oil and smoke, the imprint of thousands of feet upon its floor. Outside, the city feels alive again. The streets shimmer with light reflected from puddles left by the water carriers. Groups linger to talk, recounting favorite moments of the night. Children mimic the dancers they have seen twirling in the torchlight. In the distance, the Tiber reflects the glow of the lamps, winding like a ribbon of gold through the sleeping districts. Far from the noise, in the quiet courtyards of homes, the echoes of the games still linger. A father tells his son about the chariots that will race at dawn. A poet sits by his window, inspired by the laughter he heard earlier. Even the priests at their temples hear the faint hum of joy rising from the streets and smile, knowing that faith and pleasure are not so far apart. As the torches burn lower, Rome begins to settle once more. The performers pack their instruments, the crowds thin, and the night grows cooler. Yet the spirit of the games remains, in the echo of applause, in the memory of music, in the glow of shared light that binds the city together. The games of the people are more than spectacle. They are reflection of joy, of unity, of the desire to see beauty and courage before sleep takes hold. The empire may stretch across continents, but in these moments, all of Rome gathers in one voice, one rhythm, one breath. The last torches fade. The great amphitheater lies silent, its arches dark against the stars. The moon glides above, silver and calm, watching over the city that never truly sleeps. Within its walls, laughter, song, and prayer have mingled into a single harmony. Rome exhales softly, and the night returns to peace. Part 12, The Voices of the Streets. The roar of the crowd has faded, yet Rome still stirs beneath the stars. The games are over, but the night belongs to those who live by its gentler rhythm, the vendors, the lovers, the watchmen, and the countless others who move through the shadows while most of the city sleeps. The lamps along the main streets burn low, their oil nearly spent, casting a warm and unsteady glow across the stones. From the upper windows, laughter still drifts, mingling with the faint hum of distant music. The city at night feels different. The grandeur of the day has given way to intimacy. The marble and bronze that gleamed under the sun now lie softened by darkness, the temples and arches reduced to silhouettes against the moonlit sky. Between the alleys, a faint mist rises from the river, curling through the lower streets and clinging to the stones. The air smells of smoke, wine, and the faint sweetness of bread cooling in the bakeries that work through the night. Near the forum, a small group of street vendors has gathered around their carts. They sell roasted nuts, figs, and slices of cheese wrapped in leaves to those still wandering after the games. Their voices are hushed but friendly, and their torches hiss quietly when drops of oil fall onto the flames. A pair of soldiers stop to buy food, sharing it as they lean against a column. Their armor glints faintly in the light. They speak of the races that will begin at dawn, of letters from home, of the strange quiet that comes when a city finally exhales. Across the street, a musician plays softly on a lyre. His melody is slow, meant not to entertain but to accompany the night itself. Passers-by toss coins into his bowl, the sound of metal on clay, gentle and deliberate. He nods to each giver, his music never faltering. Behind him, the outline of a temple looms, its doors closed, its flame extinguished until morning. The tune he plays seems to echo from those ancient stones, as though the gods themselves listen from the dark. In the narrow lanes of the Subura, light seeps through shutters and half-open doors. Taverns still glow with warmth and noise. Inside, voices rise and fall, laughter, arguments, songs half-remembered. The smell of wine and smoke clings to the air. Patrons sit close together, their faces flushed, their eyes bright. A man stands on a stool, telling a story about a senator who mistook his own slave for an ambassador. The room erupts in laughter. For a few hours more, the struggles of life seem distant, softened by drink and companionship. Outside, lovers walk through the quieter streets. Their steps are slow, their hands clasped, their voices low. The torches throw long shadows before them. They pass through gardens where fountains murmur and down alleys where ivy climbs the walls. The air is cool and sweet, scented by flowering vines that only open at night. For them, the vast city feels small, enclosed within the circle of lamplight that moves as they walk. Farther along, in the district of the workshops, the rhythm of hammers has returned. Not every trade sleeps. The bakers begin their work long before dawn, kneading dough in great wooden troughs. The sound of their fists against the dough echoes through the courtyards, a steady and comforting beat. The ovens glow from within, their fires turning the air golden. The smell of warm bread drifts through the streets, drawing even the stray dogs who wait patiently by the doors. By the river, the night is busier. Dock workers unload the last of the barges under the glow of torches set along the quay. They move with practiced ease, their bodies outlined in firelight. The water reflects the orange shimmer of the flames, rippling like molten metal. Voices call across the docks, giving orders, sharing jokes. A small group of children watch from a distance, fascinated by the dance of light on water. For them, the docks at night are a world of mystery, dangerous yet full of wonder. Not far away, a woman walks with a basket of laundry balanced on her head. She crosses a bridge where the moonlight shines silver on the river. Her sandals make soft sounds on the stones. She hums quietly to herself, a song she learned as a child. The bridge is empty except for her and the watchmen who stand at each end, their spears catching the light. They nod as she passes, and she disappears into the far shadows. At the top of the Capitoline Hill, the city watch gathers. They are the guardians of the night, their cloaks dark, their torches bright. From their vantage point, they can see nearly all of Rome spread beneath them, a sea of roofs and flickering lights. They move in pairs through the streets, ensuring that fires are kept in check, that order holds. When they pass, the vendors nod in respect. Their presence brings a sense of quiet safety, a reminder that even in darkness, the city is watched and protected. In one of the upper quarters, a poet sits by his window, unable to sleep. He listens to the distant sounds of the city, a dog barking, a cart rolling, a voice singing faintly far away. He takes up his stylus and writes a few lines about the night, about how the city never truly rests. To him, the streets below are veins of light, carrying life through the sleeping body of Rome. When he finishes, he blows out his lamp and watches the smoke drift toward the stars. The streets near the baths are quieter now. A few late travelers pass, their sandals brushing the stones. The air here is damp and cool, carrying the scent of water from the great fountains that never stop flowing. The sound of their steady streams fills the silence, as though the city itself breathes in rhythm with them. A cat walks along the edge of a wall, pausing to watch the reflection of the torchlight on the ground below. Then it leaps silently into the dark and disappears. In the courtyards of the wealthy, servants move softly through the shadows. They collect empty cups from dinner tables, extinguish lamps, and close the shutters. The masters sleep in the rooms above, their dreams undisturbed by the faint creak of wooden doors. In the kitchens, a few embers still glow. The scent of roasted meat lingers, mixed with the faint sweetness of wine. The last sound is the sweep of a broom across the floor, a quiet ritual of closure. In the narrow streets below, the beggars find their corners for the night. They wrap themselves in worn cloaks and lie against the walls, their heads resting on folded arms. Some murmur prayers before sleep, others stare at the stars visible between the rooftops. A few light small fires to keep warm, their flames trembling in the breeze. Though the city's splendor often overlooks them, they belong to it as surely as the temples and senators. Rome's greatness, they know, is built not only on marble, but on endurance. The hour grows late. The torches along the main streets begin to die out one by one. The moon climbs higher, pale and perfect. Its light silvers the domes, the statues, and the river below. The noise of the taverns fades, replaced by the faint chorus of insects singing from the gardens. The air cools and a quiet peace settles over the city. Only the watchmen remain in motion. Their footsteps echo through the empty squares, steady and patient. When they pass beneath the great arches, their torches cast brief halos of light on the carvings above, scenes of conquest, triumph, and divine favor. The carvings seem to breathe in the shifting light, the faces of gods and generals looking down upon the silent streets they once ruled in life. At the edge of the forum, a single torch burns beside the statue of a goddess. A stray dog lies curled at its base, sleeping. The flame flickers, bending with the wind, but never goes out. Around it, the square stands empty, the stones gleaming faintly under the moon. Here, where the voices of the day once rose like thunder, there is now only the soft whisper of wind between the columns. The voices of the streets are not those of noise and crowd, but of presence, of life, continuing quietly in the margins. The city has not stopped. It has simply lowered its tone. Rome breathes in this quiet, as alive in its stillness as it was in its uproar. As the last hour before dawn approaches, the first hint of gray touches the horizon. The torches burn to stubs, the fires fade, and the night begins to loosen its hold. Soon the bakers will carry their baskets into the streets, the watch will end its rounds, and the city will awaken once more. But for now, Rome rests in the gentle hum of its own endurance, wrapped in silence, waiting for the light. Part 13. The Vigil of the Watchmen. The city sleeps, yet it is not unguarded. Through its long avenues and narrow alleys, the night watch moves with quiet purpose. Their torches cast pools of light that sway with each step, revealing the gleam of helmets and the soft glint of metal on leather. They are the keepers of Rome's peace when all others rest, the eyes that see through shadow, the hands that guard against fire and theft, the presence that ensures order even in silence. The hour is deep. The moon stands high above the rooftops, its pale light washing over the marble of temples and the tiled domes of bathhouses. A faint mist lingers near the river, and the streets glisten with dew. The air feels cool and still, carrying only the distant echo of the Tiber's slow current. From somewhere in the hills comes the low call of an owl, answered by another far away. Two watchmen walk side by side down a quiet street near the Palatine. Their sandals make soft sounds on the stones. They speak little, their voices kept low, yet there is comfort in their companionship. Each holds a staff tipped with bronze, a symbol of duty more than a weapon. From time to time they stop to check the doorways of shops, running their hands along the wooden beams to be sure that none are warm with hidden fire. A single spark could undo an entire quarter. When they reach the corner, one lifts his torch to inspect a water jar left for emergencies. The light reflects on its surface, still and clear. Satisfied, they move on, turning into a lane where ivy hangs low over the walls. The smell of night-blooming flowers mixes with the faint scent of smoke from a dying hearth. The city seems to breathe softly around them. Farther north, another patrol passes beneath the great arches of the Forum. Their footsteps echo faintly between the columns where statues of statesmen and gods stand watch in silence. The torchlight flickers across their faces, bringing them momentarily to life. The marble eyes catch the flame and seem almost to follow the men as they move. The watchmen pause for a moment, gazing at the vast emptiness of the square. In daylight it teems with voices, merchants, and lawgivers. At this hour it is a kingdom of shadow and stone. A captain joins them, his cloak drawn close against the cool air. He carries a small wax tablet and stylus, noting the time and the condition of the lamps. His task is not glory, but constancy. He has walked these same routes for 20 years, through fires, riots, and nights of calm like this one. He gestures toward a distant alley where a faint glow is visible. Together they move toward it, cautious but calm. It is only a brazier left burning too long outside a tavern. One of the men pours water over the coals, the steam rising in a brief white cloud. The smell of wet ash fills the air. Another small danger is extinguished before it can grow. In another district near the Esquiline Gate, the watchmen tend to a different duty. Here, water flows through the channels of the aqueducts, feeding the fountains that never rest. A team checks the flow, listening for the hiss that might signal a leak. They speak to one another in quiet tones, their words blending with the sound of running water. One kneels to feel the temperature of the stone, another adjusts a valve. Their torches reflect on the surface, breaking into ripples of gold. Above them, the stars shine faintly through the rising mist.
Elsewhere, the Vigilas gather around a small fire at a crossroads to warm themselves before resuming their rounds. They share bread, dried fruit, and cups of watered wine, passing them in silence or with a few soft words. One tells a story about the early days of his service, when a lightning strike set a warehouse ablaze and the men fought the flames until dawn.
The others listen, nodding, their faces lit by the steady glow. When the food is gone, they stamp out the embers, tighten their belts, and return to the streets. Their patience is part of their strength. The night deepens. From the direction of the Sabura comes the faint sound of laughter that quickly fades again. Somewhere a door closes and a dog barks once before settling. The city holds its breath, poised between darkness and the first thought of morning. The watchmen walk on, their torches shrinking and flaring in the wind. One pair crosses the bridge over the Tiber. The water below glimmers with moonlight moving in long, slow folds. The men pause halfway across to rest their arms on the stone balustrade. From here they can see the whole curve of the river, the flicker of distant lamps, the silhouettes of towers and domes. A barge drifts silently under the bridge, its single oarsman guiding it by the stars. They watch until it passes from sight, then resume their path on the far side. The bridge leads them toward the warehouses of the Aventine. The air smells of grain and salt. Crates are stacked in neat rows, and the shadows between them are deep. They move carefully, their torches throwing narrow beams into the gaps. All is quiet except for the creak of ropes and the distant lapping of water. Satisfied that all is well, they turn back toward the inner city. Above the rooftops, the first faint color of dawn begins to show, not light yet, but a thinning of the dark. The men sense it without looking. The longest part of their watch is nearly done. Still, they do not relax their pace. A final circuit must be made before they can rest. They pass by the closed doors of a temple, then along a narrow street where the bakers are already stirring their ovens. The smell of bread fills the air once more, rich and comforting. One of the men smiles and inhales deeply. The scent reminds him of home, of mornings long before he wore the uniform of the watch. They stop at a fountain to refill their water skins. The water is cold, drawn from deep within the hills beyond the city. It splashes softly into the stone basin, clear and unending. For a moment, the men stand in silence, listening to it. The sound is like a heartbeat, constant and pure. When they have drunk, they turn toward the rising light. At the main station of the Vigiles, near the firehouse of the 7th cohort, other patrols are returning. Their torches are nearly spent, their cloaks damp with dew. They exchange brief greetings, simple nods of acknowledgement. Inside the courtyard, a brazier burns steadily, its flame fed by the men on duty. They record their rounds, note any disturbances, and hand over their reports to the captain. The relief shift waits, already awake and prepared to take their places as the new day begins. For a moment before dismissal, the captain looks out toward the east. The sky there has turned from black to deep blue. The first bird sings, tentative and clear. He knows that within an hour the streets will fill again with carts, voices, and the sound of trade. His men will fade back into the rhythm of the city, unseen but always near. He raises a hand in quiet salute, a gesture of respect to the night that has passed without fire, riot, or death. The watchmen disperse, walking home through streets now touched by dawn. Their shadows stretch long behind them as the first rays of sunlight strike the tops of the buildings. The marble of temples glows faintly, and the river turns to silver. The city begins to stir, doors opening, footsteps returning, the hum of life rising once more. For the Vigiles, the night's labor is invisible, yet essential. They have held the fragile silence of the city, guarded its breath while it slept. The fires they prevented will never be known, the peace they preserved will go unspoken, yet their presence lingers in every unburned wall, every quiet street. By the time the sun clears the horizon, the torches have all been extinguished. The watchmen rest in their barracks, their armor set aside, their faces calm. Outside, Rome awakens in light and noise. The night's secrets recede into memory, carried only by those who walked its empty streets. The vigil of the watchmen is complete. The city stands unharmed, its silence passed from darkness to dawn, its pulse steady and eternal. Part 14, The First Light. The last shadows of night fade along the curve of the hills, and the air above Rome begins to change. The stars pale, retreating one by one into the brightening sky. A soft gray spreads through the east, and the river catches its reflection, turning silver where it bends beneath the bridges. The first light of morning rises quietly, almost unseen at first, until it spills across the rooftops and the towers, warming the stones that have cooled through the long night. The city stirs. It does not wake with sudden noise, but with a slow and patient breath. The bakeries are already alive, their fires burning low and steady. The smell of bread drifts through the alleys, mingling with the faint scent of wet earth and the sweetness of crushed herbs from gardens still heavy with dew. The sound of footsteps begins to return, the shuffle of a broom sweeping a courtyard, the soft creak of a door opening, the quiet hum of a new day beginning. From the Palatine Hill, the light touches the great villas first. The marble glows faintly, and the bronze gates shimmer as though newly polished. A servant opens the shutters of a sleeping chamber, letting the cool air flow inside. Birds dart across the garden pools, scattering the reflection of dawn. The fountains resume their soft rhythm, water rising and falling in endless motion. Inside, the first voices of the day echo through the halls as slaves and attendants prepare for their master's awakening. Down in the streets, the vendors begin to gather. They set up their stalls, arranging baskets of vegetables, fruits, and bread. The clatter of wooden wheels on stone returns as carts arrive from the countryside, laden with grain, olives, and amphorae of oil. The animals snort and stamp, their breath steaming in the cool air. Drivers call to one another as they unload their goods. The sound carries through the streets, bouncing from wall to wall like the heartbeat of the waking city. At the Tiber's edge, the mist lifts. The river glows under the first sun, and the barges tied along its banks shift gently with the current. Fishermen untangle their nets, their movements slow and practiced. They speak little, working by habit, the rhythm of the morning embedded in their hands. A few children gather near the water, throwing small stones that skip across the surface. Their laughter rises with the birds' songs, both carried by the same rising light. In the markets near the forum, the merchants unlock their shops. Bronze bolts slide back and doors swing open. The sound of sweeping fills the air as the dust of yesterday is brushed away. One man polishes a row of amphorae, another arranges fabrics in bright folds of color. A woman sets a tray of jewelry in the window, the gold catching the first rays of sun and scattering them into small sparks of light. The city that seemed lifeless in the night now glows again with purpose and movement. The temples, too, awaken. The priests and acolytes open their doors, letting the light fall across the altars. Smoke curls upward from the first offerings of the day, a pinch of grain, a drop of oil, a few leaves of laurel placed gently on the coals. The scent of burning herbs fills the air, clean and sharp. Bells ring softly to mark the hour of prayer. A few citizens pause on their way to work, lifting their hands in brief reverence before continuing down the street. The gods of Rome are greeted once more, their altars renewed by the rising sun. High on the Capitoline, the statue of Jupiter glows golden in the dawn. From this height, The city stretches in every direction, its streets unfolding like threads of light. Smoke from countless chimneys rises in thin columns, curling upward until it vanishes into the pale sky. The hum of the awakening city carries faintly upward, a sound that is not loud yet full of life, the music of countless small tasks begun at once. In the workshops, craftsmen return to their benches. The blacksmith's forge is lit again, the flames flickering red and gold. The carpenter's saw moves through fresh wood, its sound steady and familiar. Potters knead clay, sculptors sharpen chisels, and the first hammer strikes ring out like the heartbeat of the morning. Each sound joins the others to form a rhythm that has endured through centuries, the sound of labor made sacred by repetition. In the poorer quarters, families rise together. Mothers sweep the floors and stir pots of porridge. Fathers gather tools, adjusting the straps of their sandals. Children carry water from the public fountains, their laughter bright and untroubled. The light in these streets is softer, filtered through the hanging lines of laundry and the narrow gaps between the houses. It paints everything in gold, the worn walls, the rough faces, the simple joy of movement after rest. A farmer from the countryside enters the city gates as they open for the day. His cart creaks beneath the weight of vegetables and herbs. The guards greet him with nods, checking his cargo before waving him through. Beyond the gate, the street slopes downward toward the market, lined with sleeping dogs and early risers on their way to work. He steers the cart slowly, smiling as he passes the first open tavern where men drink the morning's wine and talk of the weather. The city welcomes him as it does all who feed it, quietly, without ceremony, yet with unspoken gratitude. As the sun climbs higher, its warmth reaches the courtyards and terraces. The marble shines with new brightness, and the fountains sparkle like liquid glass. From the gardens, the smell of rosemary and pine rises, carried by the faint morning wind. The air is alive with small sounds, the buzzing of bees, the chirping of swallows nesting beneath the eaves, the distant clatter of hooves on the paving stones. The light turns from silver to gold, and the whole city seems to breathe. In the great forum, life returns fully. Merchants call to one another, scribes open their boxes of wax tablets, and customers haggle over prices. The sound of commerce fills the air, blending with the distant calls of priests and the rhythm of footsteps. Messengers run through the crowd carrying scrolls, their sandals slapping against the stones. Near the temples, philosophers gather again beneath the porticos, resuming the debates that paused the night before. The city's mind and body awaken together, each feeding the other in perfect balance. The watchmen, now off duty, walk home through this new brightness. They pass by the bakers and nod in greeting, accepting small loaves and thanks for their night's work. Their faces are tired, but their steps are light. They have carried the city safely through the dark, and now the light has taken their place. Behind them, the torches are cold, replaced by the brilliance of the sun. In one of the hill's villas, a nobleman steps onto his terrace, cup in hand. He looks out over the city, the sun glinting on the roofs and river below. The sight never loses its wonder. He knows that beyond the beauty lies labor, faith, and unending motion, yet for this moment he sees only harmony, a city built of both stone and spirit, renewed every morning by the hands of its people. Down in the streets, a mother takes her child by the hand and walks toward the market. The child looks up at the birds circling the sky and points with wonder. The mother smiles, her eyes soft with affection and fatigue. Around them, the voices of the crowd rise and fall like a tide. Life, in all its ordinary grace, begins again. By mid-morning, the full light of day shines upon Rome. The colors of the city come alive, the reds of the roofs, the greens of the gardens, the gleam of white marble where the sun strikes. From the hills to the river, everything glows with renewed clarity. The darkness of night feels distant now, as if it never was. The city is once again what it has always been: vast, restless, alive. The cycle of work, rest, and worship continues unbroken. The fires of the bathhouses will be lit again, the markets will fill, the temples will smoke with offerings, and the voices of the people will rise like music beneath the open sky. The first light has done its work. It has returned Rome to itself, washing the city clean of shadow and silence. The stones warm, the air stirs, and the Tiber gleams like a thread of light through the heart of the world. In this gentle rebirth, the city seems eternal, not because of its monuments or its power, but because every dawn brings the same quiet miracle. Life begins again, and Rome, vast and human, opens its eyes to another day. Part 15, The Eternal City. The sun now stands high above the 7 hills, and the sound of Rome fills the air once more. The city is fully awake. From the marble courts of the Palatine to the crowded lanes of the Suburra, life has returned in all its measured rhythm. Yet beneath the noise and motion, something deeper moves, the quiet continuity that binds this place across centuries, a pulse older than memory itself. In every direction, people move with purpose. The bakers deliver their loaves to the markets, their baskets still warm from the ovens. The smiths return to their forges, the first hammer strikes ringing out in quick succession. Carpenters plane the edges of new beams, and potters open the kilns they sealed the night before. The streets are bright, the air carries the mingled scents of bread, smoke, oil, and stone. Rome has stepped once more into the rhythm of living, as it has done every morning for generations. Children play near fountains, chasing one another through sprays of water that glitter like glass. Merchants arrange their wares beneath colorful awnings, calling out to passers-by with familiar warmth. Couriers hurry between offices, scrolls tucked beneath their arms. The hum of conversation rises and falls like the tide. Though the faces change, the gestures remain the same, passed down from one life to the next, small ordinary acts that together sustain the vastness of the city. In the Forum, the senators gather beneath the porticos. Their sandals strike the marble floor in quiet rhythm as they walk to their places. Voices murmur, scrolls are unrolled, decisions are weighed. The air smells faintly of wax, ink, and old parchment. Politics, debate, ceremony all continue with the steady gravity that Rome expects of itself. Yet even here, where power speaks and law is shaped, there is a sense that the city is larger than any one moment. The senators are temporary. Rome endures. In the temples, priests tend the morning flames. Smoke rises in straight white columns against the blue sky. The same prayers are spoken that were spoken yesterday and will be spoken again tomorrow. Worshippers pass through in quiet reverence, leaving coins, bread, or flowers at the altars. A child kneels beside her mother, watching the fires dance and learning without words what it means to belong to something older than herself. Along the river, the docks have come to life again. Crates are stacked, ropes thrown, sails unfurled. Barges push off from the quays, carrying their cargo toward the sea. The water glitters under the sunlight, reflecting the arches of the bridges above. Fishermen call to one another, their voices rising above the creak of oars. The city's heartbeat flows with the river, steady and unending, carrying both memory and promise through its current. As the hours pass, the streets fill with the music of daily life. Metal tools strike stone, wheels roll over cobblestones, and vendors sing to draw attention to their goods. The noise is not chaos, but rhythm, an orchestra of labor, faith, and habit. Even the silence of the temples and the stillness of shaded courtyards seem to move in time with it. Everything within the city belongs to this single motion, this great and living harmony. In the quiet spaces between the sounds, one can still sense the layers of time resting beneath the surface. The past does not disappear here, it lingers in every wall and column, in the pattern of each street. Beneath the new plaster lies the work of ancestors. Beneath each step lies the dust of centuries. To live in Rome is to walk among ghosts not of sorrow, but of endurance. The city remembers everything, and through that memory it remains alive. On the Aventine, a group of scholars gather in the shade of a garden. They speak softly, their words carried away by the breeze. One reads from a scroll of poetry that praises the city as eternal, not in marble or empire, but in the continuity of its people. The others nod in quiet agreement. Around them, bees move among the flowers, and the scent of rosemary fills the air. The poet's voice blends with the sound of water flowing from a nearby fountain, and for a moment, all feels perfectly balanced. Thought, nature, and time woven into one still moment. As afternoon begins to warm the air, the city slows again. The workers rest in doorways, the markets quiet. The hum of life softens, replaced by the whisper of wind through the cypress trees. The temples stand silent in the sun, their columns casting long shadows across the squares. A pigeon lands on the outstretched arm of a statue, cooing softly before taking flight. Everything seems to pause, as if Rome itself draws breath before the evening. In the houses of the wealthy, curtains are drawn against the light. Servants move quietly, carrying water for washing or wine to cool in the shade. In the humbler quarters, families share their midday meal, bread dipped in oil, a few olives, a handful of fruit. Laughter drifts from open windows, mingling with the rustle of leaves. The city's greatness is not only in its monuments, but in these small, repeated moments that form the rhythm of ordinary grace. Later, when the shadows lengthen again, Rome will begin its cycle anew. The baths will fill, the markets will close, the lamps will be lit. The games, the music, the prayers, all will return in their appointed time. Night will fall, the watchmen will walk their routes, and dawn will come again. In this endless circle, there is no weariness, only the quiet assurance that life continues. As the sun lowers toward the western hills, its light turns golden. The roofs and domes catch the glow, and the river mirrors it in long, wavering streaks. Children laugh in the distance, dogs bark, a bell rings from a temple. The day draws toward completion, not in haste, but in fulfillment. Every corner of the city has played its part, the workers, the priests, the scholars, the unseen hands that keep Rome alive. From the Palatine, the view stretches far and wide. The horizon glows, and the shadows reach across the valley. A breeze moves through the cypress trees, carrying with it the scent of warm stone and olive wood. In the streets below, torches are being lit one by one, repeating the gesture that has marked the end of every Roman day. The city glows again, this time not with the fire of industry or worship, but with calm light, gentle, constant, human. It is the same light that has burned through countless generations, the same flame that will burn again tomorrow. As darkness gathers, the noise fades, replaced by the steady murmur of water and wind. The Tiber flows on, indifferent yet faithful, its current gliding past the arches and under the bridges. The stars return, faint at first, then bright. Rome exhales, and stillness returns. In this silence lies the truth of its eternity. The city is not only stone, nor law, nor empire. It is the echo of footsteps, the flicker of lamps, the voices that rise and fade yet never disappear. It is the rhythm of labor and rest, of faith and laughter, of all that lives within and beyond its walls. Every dawn that follows will bring the same miracle, a city awakening once more as if it has never known sleep. Every night will bring the same peace as if it has never known struggle. Between the two lies all of human life, carried forward by the hands of those who love, build, and remember. Rome stands eternal because it does not resist time. It moves with it, breathes with it, endures it. The stones may crumble, the names may fade, but the rhythm continues, always returning to that first light that glows over the hills, reminding the world that life, like the city itself, is endless in its renewal. And as the night deepens once more and the stars scatter across the dark, the eternal city rests, timeless, watchful, alive, waiting for another dawn.